Hello, it's 6:30 p.m. on January 23rd, 2023, and this is a meeting of the Oakville Council's Planning and Development Council. Madam Clerk, I don't think we have any regrets for this meeting. And Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, none are showing. It would be now in order for two of us to move and second us into committee of the whole. Councillor Dudek, thank you. Councillor Longo, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries. And now we're in a session where it only takes a mover, we don't need a seconder, and we have relaxed rules around presentation to allow public participation in planning matters. Council, the first thing before you is the consent items. As I understand it, we might have a person wishing to delegate on one of the consent items. Mr. Garvey, what's the story there? Do we have a delegation on that, Madam Clerk?
Let's see. So we had a Stephen who wanted to register. He did say he might not be able to attend, so I'm not sure if he's in the chamber. Is there a Stephen in the chamber? No, he did send in correspondence though, so council does have that in front of them.
Oh, perfect. All right, then council, can I have a motion for the consent items? Councillor Dudek, thank you. Any objection? There being no objection, the consent items are adopted. Now, that brings us to, and Councillor, just to be clear, the confidential consent items were covered by your motion as well? Thank you. So now, we have public hearing items, and Neil Garvey, our Commissioner of Planning, is going to provide a brief description of the new process for public hearing reports. In order to save the public money, under the strict terms of Bill 109, we've had to adjust our procedures to speed them up a bit. Mr. Garvey, Commissioner Garvey, perhaps you could elaborate on that theme for everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Tonight are our first statutory public meetings under the provisions of Bill 109 and the condensed timeframes for council decisions. The purpose of the meeting remains the same: to solicit the thoughts and identify additional issues from council and interested public for staff consideration as staff prepare its recommendation for council at an upcoming meeting. Tonight, you will see the applicant present the application, which is different from the past. The presentation is intended to be a factual reflection of the application as submitted. The applicant is available to answer clarifying questions that you may have. Having the applicant present is a time savings, as the planner can focus on the evaluation of the proposal and not the administration of the public meeting. The planner responsible for the file is also available to answer or elaborate on questions you may have about the process or next steps. Following all the delegations, the planner responsible will summarize for council the list of additional issues that staff will be addressing as the application is being evaluated. This function, previously performed by the director, allows the public and council to know who the key contact for the file will be. In the prior process, this was evident as the staff planner would present the application. I would ask you to provide us feedback about the process so that we can make refinements going forward as we address the challenges of meeting the provincial timeframes as established in Bill 103. We do welcome your feedback, and we appreciate your mercy and grace through this the first effort. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. 103 or 109, I'm pretty sure it's 109. I'd like to just amplify what the commissioner said, because not all of us were here when we did this. It used to be that a recommendation report for an application would come forward to a hearing at council, at which time the public's opinion and council's opinion would be solicited. And staff's opinion, as written in the report, had already been formulated. And this presented to the council of the day that made this decision, it appeared that this was a flawed process because we were soliciting public comment, but at a stage where it couldn't be taken into account. because the report was already written and the record was already created, which would be used on any appeal. And so to break that conundrum, council, several terms ago, said, well, we need an information report, a public information report, and later a recommendation report. And that way, there's time for the staff to consider informing their expert planning opinion, which becomes evidence in any appeal. They had an opportunity to consider the information brought by the public and the council members. And so with that background, you may understand that today's change is not that radical. In fact, you could see it as a natural evolution of what we did in the first place to break up the process into two separate events that gave an opportunity for the public and council's input to be truly considered and possibly reflected. So I hope that that helps everybody over the hump of a change. I know that in Oakville, we are always surprised at change and never sure that change is good, but I think this is a change that will wear successfully. So now, their first public hearing item is the public meeting report for the official plan amendment by Infrastructure Ontario concerning 2551 Sherwood Heights Drive. We have a presentation from the GSP Group planner, Eric Solaleja. I hope if I'm wrong, he'll forgive me. And we have Kate Coburn, our staff planner, available for questions. If there are any people watching the live stream of the meeting and wish to speak to the item, they can call 905-815-6095 to be connected to the meeting. You'll be called upon to speak following the registered delegations, of whom we have two, one from the Clearview Oakville Community Alliance and a gentleman named John Shield. Now, I just want to say that this is not if it isn't clear already, this is not a deciding meeting. This is a gathering information meeting. This is not the arguing meeting, if you will. This is the name your issue meeting. And the point of that is that staff can go research whether or not your issue has any footing in the Planning Act and in the other laws and regulations that govern this. And if that footing can be found, then your issue may very well serve you. And if it can't, then your issue may not be of a deciding importance. And that's just that's the law of the land here. So with that, Madam Clerk, can you make the presentation available? Are you Eric? I'm confident in the pronunciation of that. When I hear you tell me the correct pronunciation of your name, I'll be better informed. And if you would move the mic around and speak into the mic.
Do you want technician to advance your slides by saying next slide, or do you want to advance with the arrow key?
I can advance with the arrow key.
Yeah. So for the people at home to hear you, it's going to be really important that you and the mic are good friends.
Right. You can hear me? All right.
There's an adjustment here.
No.
Oh,
Wow.
a high-tech feature we didn't know was there.
All right. Well, Mayor Burton, members of council, members of the public, staff, my name's Eric Solaleja, and I'm a planner with GSP Group, and we're representing Infrastructure Ontario for an official plan amendment, 2551 Sherwood Heights Drive. So as you can see from the slide, the site is located on the corner of Sherwood Heights Drive and Kingsway Drive, adjacent to the 403 and QEW interchange. The site is approximately 7.4 hectares in area and is currently vacant. Kingsford Garden Park is on the opposite side of Sherwood Heights Drive from the property. And on the other side of the park is where the residential community begins. And the residential properties fronting Eddie Shane Drive and Winterburn Drive that back onto the park are approximately 105 meters away from the site. As demonstrated on the map, the area is generally characterized with both employment and residential uses while being adjacent to both the QEW and the 403. The Ford site is located to the south, with the additional employment uses being further along Sherwood Heights Drive. The access to both the 403 and the QEW, and as well as having visual exposure to the highway and the park buffer to residential use, make it an ideal location for employment uses. All right, so this is an illustrated concept that we prepared in support of the application. Now, this is just for illustrative purposes only, and it's to demonstrate how, the site could be laid out, and the number of buildings and floor plates and designs, and parking, and ultimately the ultimate use of the property would be up to a future purchaser, and would have to go through a zoning bylaw amendment process as well as a formal site plan process as well. All right, so this slide shows the livable Oakville plan, and the site is designated Parkway Belt in the livable Oakville official plan. The Parkway Belt designation reflects the site's previous status as being part and reserved for infrastructure purposes such as utility, roads, electric power facility, and interurban transit. And the site has since been removed from the Parkway Belt West plan. So the town's official plan provides direction that the town will encourage the province to continue to remove lands from the Parkway Belt West plan, and any such lands that were removed would fall under the coverage of the Town of Oakville official plan. And so as such, a new land use designation would have to be put in place, and in this case, we're proposing a business employment designation. And this is similar to other lands with similar locational characteristics. As you'll see on the slide, lands on the north side of the QEW to the west are designated business employment. The site is zoned utility under the current zoning bylaw for Oakville. And the utility zone implements basically the Parkway Belt land use designation. And there's no zoning bylaw amendment proposed at this time, and this will be subject to the future purchaser of the land. So a virtual public meeting was held on March 23rd, 2022, and prior to the submission of the official plan amendment application, and it had a peak of about 22 people, and it included councillors Haslett-Thiel as well as Councillor Giddings, and as well as members of the IO team. The public information meeting began with a presentation by GSP Group, and then explaining the application, and then followed by a question and answer period. And a range of questions were asked at the public information meeting prior to submission of the application, and it included what supporting technical studies, questions about clarity of removal from the Parkway Belt West plan, questions about the future purchaser, amongst others. And some of the responses were provided was that, the land would be developed for business employment uses, which would be, the majority of users would be probably in the 33,000 square foot to 20,000 square foot range, and a mix of employment uses. And there's some questions with respect to the natural heritage on the site, and NRSI had done a environmental impact study, which was submitted with the application, but they did field work in advance of that, the public information meeting, and they determined that there's no significant features that were found. The vegetative communities were, there was no significant features found, like the species that were present on the site weren't significant, and the vegetation communities, where there were pockets of site dominated by invasive species like Phragmites on the site. And there was also, questions about land use compatibility, and the land use compatibility study was provided, and light industrial uses are expected to have an impact on the residents, and there's like a lot of ambient noise given the QEW and Highway 403, particularly the Highway over 403 overpass, which produces a lot of traffic noise in the area. And future applications are anticipated to be supported by land use compatibility studies, traffic studies, functional servicing studies, and stormwater management reports to provide an additional opportunity for the public to participate in the process. So, moving on. So, just to summarize, the property was owned by the Ministry of Infrastructure, and it was declared surplus by the province in February 8th, 2021. And on March 22nd, 2022, the application to remove the site from the Parkway Belt West plan was approved. And Infrastructure is the Crown agency responsible representing the Ministry of Infrastructure. And they're seeking an amendment to redesignate the site business development before selling it on the open, business employment, sorry, before selling it on the open market. So, as I said, I'm going to provide a little bit of background. Section, like business employment, section 14.4 of the Town of Oakville official plan, the business employment provides for a range and mix of employment uses, primarily in enclosed buildings with minimal impact on surrounding uses. And that's set right in the initial opening paragraphs, and it permits a variety of uses, which, given the site locational characteristics, would be very much supported by the business community. All right, and we will take GSP with IO, and the IO project team would be glad to take and continue to work with staff to address any areas of concern and make the necessary submissions to address the feedback received. So I guess this concludes the presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have or any members of the public have.
Thank you, Mr. Solazaya. We appreciate your information. Are there members of council with questions? Councillor Haslett-Deal.
I wonder, just because it's a new process, can we hear the delegations and then have the gentleman come back and ask him questions?
I don't see why not. Are there any members of council who have questions that they want to ask now?
But we can ask them after anyway.
Yes, you could,
Sure, that's fine.
but I'm trying to give every member the same courtesy. There being none, Mr. Solazaya, could you stay and come back up? Thank you very much.
Yes.
Madam Clerk, would you call the delegations?
The first registered delegation is Susan Alkenis from Clearview Oakville Community Alliance.
Welcome, Ms. Alkness. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. I'm just going to, oh, I don't need to set a timer. You've got one going there. Okay, that's good. Thank you, Mayor, councilors, staff, and members of the public. I've lived in Clearview in Oakville for almost 25 years. I raised 3 children here who attended public schools. I'm concerned about the climate catastrophe that we're all facing and the loss of undeveloped natural space, which plays a critical role in combating the impacts of our changing and collapsing climate. I'm speaking on behalf of Clearview Oakville Community Alliance tonight, and I have a number of prepared comments to share and a few closing remarks as well. As the Residents Association representing a neighborhood adjoining the property at 2551 Sherwood Heights, Clearview Oakville Community Alliance, COCA, welcomes this opportunity to share our views on the request to change the zoning of the site from Parkway Belt to Employment E2. COCA is against the designation of this property with E2 zoning. I'll note that the presentation by the representative of Infrastructure Ontario did not address in their remarks what type of employment business zoning they were requesting, but it's actually E2, and it's our feeling that E1 would be more appropriate. Our strong preference would be for this property to remain undeveloped so it can continue to provide much-needed green space for wildlife, pollinator-friendly plants, rainwater absorption, decreasing flooding, carbon capture, and the social, physical, and mental health benefits of open, natural space for residents. Those are the residents who are human. This site also serves as a buffer between the QEW Ford Drive and outdoor neighborhood gathering activity spaces, which you saw on the map provided by the presenter before me. There are also residences nearby. This site would be an excellent location for additional community garden plots to satisfy the long, multi-year waiting list. I believe the person I met at Community Gardens this summer was on for about 4 years, and now she can't use her garden very well because she now has daily responsibilities with a grandchild she didn't have at the time she got on the list. If the property is privately developed, we believe residential or E1 business zoning is more appropriate for this location, which is adjacent to these sensitive sites and close to residences, as mentioned. Before designating the zoning, it's essential to assess the impact on nearby sensitive sites and residences. For instance, Kingsford Gardens Park has busy sports fields, a community garden, a dog park, basketball court, heritage trails, and children's playground. This area is used extensively by residents for sport and leisure activities, with community members frequently parking along Sherwood Heights at this location. And when there are soccer games, they're regularly lining the shoulder of the road. I don't know if parking's permitted there or not. I might be getting some folks in trouble, but it's like lined with vehicles. It's very, very busy with vehicles, 20 or more vehicles lined up there. The town identified this area across the street from the subject lands we're discussing tonight as a neighborhood hub and recently established the Oakville Food Forest. So we're considering an application to put a food forest across the street from this development, and the Oakville Pollinator Pathway. These are in partnership with Halton Food and Oakville Green. There's insufficient data on the impact a change in land use will have on pedestrian safety. There are many, many people who run and walk and bike along this road. It's open space that's different from any other space in Clearview. All the other roads are along a residential area, along a light industrial area, along Fort Drive, along Winston Churchill. You actually have a very quiet stretch of road along Sherwood Heights that's used by many, many people right along the road on bikes, running and walking, and with their children. So there's not enough data yet on the impact of this change on pedestrian safety, traffic, parking in the two very small town-run parking lots across the street for those community amenities, the air quality, odor and noise, and it is indeed very loud, and I wonder what kind of most recent data the town has on the noise levels in the north and west part of the Clearview development, because we know anecdotally from realtors that quite regularly people are declining to purchase homes because of the noise level up there. So it's already very loud, and we don't need it to get any louder. So we strongly encourage zoning for this property that will complement the existing adjacent community outdoor space and facilities, keep any building below 3 stories, maintain significant green space on the property, ensure the safety of residents walking, running, and biking along Sherwood Heights, allow low or medium-density residential or E1 business, with perhaps maybe something like a long-term care facility, not allow heavy traffic, large trucks, loud noise, and emissions. And I'll just, I finished my prepared remarks, and I'll just mention that I'd like to bring Council's attention to the submission from the Joshua Creek Residents Association that went into some very good detail on the distinguishing elements between E1 and E2 zoning, and we appreciate their submission along those lines. And I would also share that a number of residents are following this issue and commenting on this file. We look forward to continued information from planning and opportunities for residents to comment. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you very much. You took the words right out of my mouth. Any questions for the delegation? Thank you very much for your information.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
The next registered delegation is John Shield.
Welcome, Mr. Shield. Council looks forward to your information about this application.
Okay, thank you very much. This is my 4th time trying to do this, so I really appreciate being here. I'm going to talk about Sherwood Heights. I need to give you a little bit of background first. There's some history involved, okay, and it's important, and I trust you will respect that. The slides I've given you, I'm not going to read back to you. You're intelligent people. You can go through them. You're going to ask questions and so on. I'm not here to do that. I'm going to use the slides sparingly. They talk about 3 industrial toxic dumps in Oakville, okay? Sherwood Heights happens to border one of those toxic dumps, 100 feet away. Second thing is, everybody here has always referred to me as alleging something. It's coming to the point where it's becoming, I don't know what it is, defamation or something. So I would appreciate that you would recognize that we really do have 3 industrial dumps, and Mr. Shield is full of facts. Okay, that's important. Next, the history lesson. Oakville purchased in 1952 the 9th Line dump, which is where the rugby players now play on top of. They purchased it for Ford Motor Company that moved here in 1953. You know where it is. Okay, it's a real dump. Environmental tests have been done on it, et cetera, and Houghton looks after it. Okay, I found all these dumps walking my dog around these places. So credit my dog for finding this stuff. Accidents sometimes work very well for solving problems. So anyway, the 9th Line dump filled by 1963 with mostly Ford Motor Company waste in barrels, benzene, paint, sludge, all kinds of things like that. It's a clone of many plants in the States. Ford Motor Company has been cleaned up by the EPA, but we don't have that here, okay? So the dumps, they're there, there's no question. What happened is that GSP did a study on the 9th Line, the whole parkway, which is a 100-acre property. They suggested that we build commercial buildings, townhouses, and all kinds of other things on the parkway, these guys, okay? I found out about that, and I said, I couldn't believe this. They actually put ponds on top of 2 of the dumps, aesthetic ponds on top of chemical dumps. These are real, these guys. recommended that. They're the same consultants that are recommending that we do something with Sherwood Heights.
Mr. Shield, is there any chance you'll talk about the issue before us?
Yeah, I'm coming to it. Like I told you, I needed a little bit.
I would urge you to
need
come
the
to it.
history. You need the history, okay? Because you never
We have
recognized
the
it.
history.
You don't
You've
know
been
it.
here before, sir.
Okay. They moved from the closed dump to the Ford dump, which is across from Sherwood Heights. You have it's on slide 10, if you don't mind, if you can find it. Okay? No, I can't. Look back. There, okay? You can see Sherwood Heights, like to the north, you've seen the shape. Where the arrow points is the Ford dump that they used from 1963 to 73. It's there. It's not an alluvial deposit. It's a real dump covered with a little bit of dirt, okay? It's probably one of the most toxic dumps in Ontario, and it's here, all right? We've been hiding it. You've never accepted that it's there. It's real there. Next thing, provincial legislation says that when you have a dump like that, it's tested, but we've never really tested this one. You can't build within 500 meters of that dump. 500 meters. This is 100 feet across the street, not even that. You can't build on it. You have to at least find out what the hell's in, excuse my language, what's in there, okay? Not done. So, the studies. Infrastructure Ontario says we got to do some environmental work and this and that and so on. They hire consultants. It's always the same consultants. They look inside the fence of the property that they're talking about. So it's like me being a foreigner going to a real estate agent saying, look guys, I got to buy a house in Oakville. So they find a good one. I show up, I pay the deposit, and there's a brothel next door. Okay? It's not a good house. This property has a big dump right next door to it. And you have been told by me for 4 years that these dumps exist. They're real. We can't hide them. They're real. In the United States, they've done all kinds of mitigation. They've done work, remediation, everything else, the EPA. All you got to do is look at the internet. No problem. Okay. Well, so I stopped, me personally, the work on the Parkway. All the stuff that was recommended, I talked to the lawyers of Infrastructure Ontario for 6 months. They finally said, Mr. Shield, you have a point. But they declared the land surplus. John Shield stopped that by myself without your help, okay? Because you guys want to develop. And you were in part of that thing because you were in touch with IO as they were doing this work. I have emails. So that's not good. I have a lot of problems with the planning process here in Oakville. We asked for hydrological studies. It has to be below Dundas, but all the wetlands are above Dundas. There's a whole bunch of things like that going on I don't understand. IO did all the studies here. Our planning people accept the studies. They didn't go into depth. They don't know anything about the real environmental problems, okay? They didn't go. They just accept the papers. They say to you guys, the council, this looks okay to us. You guys approve it, okay? You don't even know about the dump. You won't admit it's there. Sherwood, it's right across the street, okay? So I have no idea how you can recommend anybody doing anything there, anything. I wish we would work on the dump instead. Like that would really be a process for you people to try to understand. So I'm going to pass these notes. I'm doing a little bit of ad lib here because I just heard some stuff that I didn't know before. Slides I'm not going to go into anymore. You know where the dump is. It's very simple. Because of what's going on in Oakville, all right, we have a ghetto north of Dundas. There's hardly any room for trees. Go look at it. You won't believe what you've caused. The planning department process is broken, and it has not cracked what's going on with Sherwood. It has not figured it out. They just recommend that we do something. Wrong, okay? You can't do that. The existing dumps, the 3 of them, not just the one, have to be looked at because there's an awful lot of problems. There's a class action lawsuit for flooding. When the flooding gets mixed up with the chemicals, it's going to be 20 times the size. Okay? Because Joshua's Creek, I can tell you this, I did the calculations. 100 feet across, 2 feet deep, 30 miles an hour is the flood that's going to come from a thunderstorm that lasts 8 hours. We had that in 2000 in Oakville. That's the water that's going to hit 2 of the dumps and move them into East Oakville, into Lake Ontario, right? This dump beside Sherwood, okay, is a real thing. And you're looking at developing Sherwood, all right, with buildings and everything else and jobs, and we look good as a town. You have to look across Ford Drive and look what is there. It's horrible, okay? I'm a chemical engineer. Let me tell you, I ran half of a refinery a long time ago. I know what pollution is, and I know what chemicals are. I know what cancer is. Been there 3 times. This is that, okay? And I think, okay, at the end of this, I think what you have to realize is that you've been told this for 4 years at least, and I can prove it with all my communications. You're aware, okay? So in the real world, if an accident happens, real accident, we end up in civil court, maybe, you know, because there's a fault or this or that by accident, that, okay? When people know ahead of time, which you all do, and the staff here knows, okay, that we have 3 toxic industrial waste dumps in Oakville, with half a mile from my house, right? Half a mile. I'm upstream, like up above the water, I don't care. But there are a lot of people that should care. And the people, when this dump gets into Lake Ontario, we got no water supply. None. Then we have an international incident caused by Oakville. That's real, okay? So all I can tell you is, I'm telling you that you have a problem. If you do nothing about it, or if you even do something like develop this property and forget the dumps, and something happens with the dumps, that's a criminal situation because you've known ahead of time and you did not do anything, okay? And I don't know what your legal advice is, but as individual, counselors, I would get my own personal legal advice about what to do about this because it's on your lap. I'm sorry it ended up there. I'm a citizen here. I'm doing this for Oakville, probably for all of Ontario because of the water problem, okay? So Sherwood is there. Anybody that gets into that thing is going to have a couple of lawsuits and all kinds of other crap going on. I don't think they want to do that. So I would just forget this whole thing. Write it off. Put your notice where it should be, the dump, that dump, and then maybe the other 2, which I stopped development on. And the slides I gave you showed all the buildings on top of the dumps with the ponds and everything else. It's real, okay? 22 seconds left or something, I'm finished. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Shield, for your information. I found your remark particularly helpful when you said that if it's a toxic dump, nothing can be built within 500 meters. So if you're right,
Maybe.
it will end the application, I imagine.
No, I may be. I'm not totally sure because there's several definitions about that, okay? But
Oh, perhaps I misheard you. I thought you were quite definitive about it. But
no, I'm just telling you to put your nose in it, find out what's going on, and get GSP to look over the fence to find out what's over on the other side of the fence,
I see.
okay?
All right, well, thank you very much for your possible advice then.
You're very welcome.
Bye-bye. Madam Clerk, are there any more delegations?
Yes, we have a phone-in delegation from Iris Kingston.
Well, Iris, welcome. Ms. Kingston, council looks forward to your information.
Thank you so much. Thank you, council, for your time. I apologize. I was not able to be there in person. I have one remark, and it will be short, I promise. I would like to note the one thing that the applicant said that I am in disagreement with, and that was with respect to the zoning that already exists in the northwest end of the Clearview community. The applicant stated that the subject lands are similar to those that are already zoned E2, and with that, I would disagree. I would echo what Coca had to say about the area that directly across the street. There are very sensitive land uses. The area is used recreationally by residents. As was mentioned, there are parks there, there's soccer fields. I myself have a garden plot in Kingsford Garden. I did wait 3 years for it, and I grow food there, and my family and I eat it. We have a dog. We spend time in the dog park. So we are very concerned with what might end up being developed on the subject land. And I just want to reinforce that it is a very different situation than what the area lands are that are already zoned E2 to the northwest of the property. Subject to any questions, that's all I have for comments this evening. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Kingston, for bringing that information forward. Madam Clerk, is that it for delegations?
It is, unless there's anybody else in the audience.
Are there any other members of the public here in the council chamber with information for council on this matter? All right, then I'll confine the matter to table. And I'll try to lead by example by what I understand the purpose of the meeting to be, which is to identify issues. And so for our planners, it struck me during the applicant's representative's presentation that he focused on the appropriateness of office uses on this land. And doing a quick review of our official plans designations, I noticed that we have a designation called office employment, and that the designation he's seeking, business employment, although it does include office uses, goes on to include a number of other more industrial uses. And so I would ask for the issue to be plumbed and examined, whether the designation of business employment is the appropriate one when office employment is available as a designation in our official plan and seems to bracket the apparently intended uses that the planner for the applicant was mentioning. And council, who wants to be next? Councillor Hazlet-Thiel?
Thank you, Mayor
Eldridge?
Burton, and thank you for raising the office employment versus business employment. I concur that it needs to be looked at more closely. A few other issues that and perhaps the representative for the applicant could answer them. There seems to be some differences in what the Parkway Belt actually reports as what the land is classified as versus what has been in the public information meeting and what you've referenced tonight. And I'd ask that you go back and look at the Parkway Belt West Plan more closely, and including the map, because it talks and identifies it as actually public open space. And it references that the objective was, one of the objectives is to set out major public and private open space that will provide opportunities for recreational activities that are accessible to the system of urban areas. It also goes on in the Parkway Belt to talk about the importance of protecting those open spaces. And I'd also ask if you would look at the importance of the buffer. So there's industrial use, which we all know is on the other side of Ford. And while you've referenced talking about that it's vacant land, it's actually open space land, and it was put there to create the buffer for the residential community, which is different than other elements. You referenced the northeast on the other side of the QEW. There are no residential buildings in that area. So it is different. So I just ask that you look more closely at that.
Well, Councillor, in an effort to be of assistance, the job is to get things on the issue list, not to debate with the applicant. We debate later among ourselves. So it seems to me that I would have thought you might want to say to staff that they should explore the meanings of these things with regard to its impact on the application and lodge that as an issue on the list.
So I thought that's what I was doing, though I was also trying to help the gentleman who I know has said he wants to work with us to just go back and do some of that digging. I would also like to ask, just in terms of an issue, the revocation of the Parkway Belt, the announcement actually spoke to the objective was to build homes faster and to free up land to do that. And I'm wondering what research and land use compatibility has been done for residential on this land. It's been clear the province owns the property. This is their opportunity. If it's not within 500 meters of a toxic dump, and it's environmentally sound to do so, if a land use compatibility study could be looked at for residential, which would be compatible with the sensitive uses beside it. So I'd ask if that issue could be explored further, and encourage the province to consider that more strongly. I also would like to understand, just in terms of the environmental assessment, several of the letters that have come in have questioned the thoroughness of the environmental assessment, and if a peer review or an independent review could be done, and in particular, maybe a bit more due diligence to check about the viability of developing the land at all. And I think my only other comments would be that in terms of compatibility, office employment is what is on the north east section of Sherwood Heights. And so as the mayor has referenced, we do not have business employment in that, surrounding that residential area right now. And I put to you that it's not appropriate and it's not compatible.
Thank you, Councillor. Couldn't have said it better. And I agree with you that an alternative consideration, an issue would be, is residential designation appropriate? I think that requires some, I would suggest that the community might want to be consulted carefully about that, because in the present regime that we live in, it won't be single-family homes if it is residential. And so we need to think about what we're asking for.
So thank you for clarifying that. And absolutely, the public would, their absolute preference is that we honor what the Parkway Belt says, which is that it's open space. But if a change is to go forward, consultation around residential use would be really appropriate.
Yeah, and the trouble with the Parkway Belt, and quoting the Parkway Belt, is it says a lot of things, right? And the rule in planning is you got to read it all.
I did.
Okay. All right, Councillor Giddings is next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your comments and requests regarding office employment. I would appreciate further information on part of the map. It talks about a relocated wetland. I'd appreciate more information on that and how that would work. And I've received a number of emails from residents in the area this evening. There seems to be some confusion. The applicant was very clear with the map, but once you hit Sherwood Heights, that's the end of it. The dog park, the soccer, the community gardens, none of that is affected. There seemed to be some people wondering whether it was going to encroach across the road, and I just wanted to assure them that that will not occur. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Do you have an opinion about the relative amount of impact among the three designations, business, office, and residential? I noticed the interest of the applicant in office, and of course, I think that would be the lowest impact, because in theory, the traffic would be the lowest of all those opportunities for the development of the land. Do you have an opinion on that?
Oh, by all means. As I started my comments, I very much appreciated you raising that, and I fully concur with that, to have as least issues created in that area, whether it be noise, whether it be light, whether it be traffic along a very active community use area, whether it be, as Susan Altston said earlier, the soccer, the gardens, the dog park, and across the road with the fairly new park that we built in that far side of the community. So by all means, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next, Councillor Ilger.
Thank you. Through Mayor Burton, first of all, I'd like to thank the person from GSP for coming. When I was looking at the information we have in our report, I noted in the GSP report, March 23rd, 2022, there were slides. I just wondered, were you the gentleman that prepared the slides for the meeting on March 22nd? That was developers hosted the information meeting. With regard to that, on slide 5 of the plan amendment application, it specifically says Parkway Belt designation limits the development potential to transportation infrastructure. And I would ask if you could please go back to the actual 1978 plan and confirm that in fact the portion that you're looking at developing is actually marked out in there for transportation. Because I think I heard it tonight when you spoke also, it was infrastructure transportation. But I forgot the words open space and what was put in place by Premier Davis in 1978 regarding the 4 reasons he brought land into the Parkway Belt West Plan. And then he went also on to say that no agency could change anything in there under 5.1.7 of the 1978 plan. Every potential provincial agency shall be bound by the provisions of this plan. And it seems like something has happened since 1978 to now. And I got to say, he was quite a visionary. But, and also look at what the objectives were of that public open space system is pretty specific under section 3.111.
Counselor, these are great points, but I think we should be addressing staff to capture them and staff to report to us on these things.
I would agree, but I think also like if GSP, if they don't have an official copy of it, they wouldn't know either. So if they could look at it and then staff also, that would be good.
Whatever we say to staff, I'm pretty sure GSP will take note of.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing. We'll get there. So that's also for staff, if they could take a look at the specifics. And if you don't have a copy of the plan, I do have the original copy. It's not dog-eared too much, a lot of tabs, but I'd be glad to give it to staff. Or no, I'll make copies for you. I've never let it out of my hands since I got it. And I was too many years late getting it to know what it really said, because I over the years with the Parkway Belt West Plan, I didn't know the details when I was told something. I didn't know it was very specific in mappings.
Yeah. Well, you have a heritage acquisition there.
I do. I thank you.
Even if it has been repealed, but never mind. It is there. All right. That appears to be all the contributions we have for staff. And I'm assuming that Kate captured all of these things. Perhaps Kate wants to reassure everybody that she got it all.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. I hope that I have captured everything correctly. I have 6 items. First one is review the appropriateness of the office employment designation within the Livable Oakville Plan. Second, review the form or designation under the Parkway Belt West Plan for the subject lands. Third, review the need for additional buffers on the subject lands to sensitive land uses. 4, review land use compatibility for residential development on the subject lands. Number 5, investigate the opportunities for a peer review of the environmental impact assessment. And number 6, review the purpose and function of the relocated wetland feature. Have I missed any?
Is there anyone with any?
Did you get all my numbers?
Yes, I believe you did.
Thank you. I'm fine.
Ms. Coburn, I believe that we need to also determine whether or not there is an environmental issue across the road or down the hill from this site that would in any way limit its development from the existence or non-existence of some dump.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, through to you. Number 7, determine if there is contamination that would limit the development of the subject lands.
Yeah, so just on other land is the issue, not on this land, but near it or beside it.
Determine if there is nearby contamination that would limit the development
That would
on the
affect the
subject
development.
lands.
Yes, thank you. That's, I think, captures it very well.
Okay.
Councillor Hazard-Thiel.
Just for clarity, will you be looking at the potential of residential land use? I would add into that, because some of the letters reference it, long-term care as a use, and whether that be covered off by office employment change or other.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, item 4 has now been modified. Review land use compatibility for residential development, including long-term care on the subject lands.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, we need a motion. Sorry. You get disoriented from the screen after you spend a lot of time in the room here.
Through your worship, I'll just add to that list a mixed-use designation as well. It seems like we've talked about office and residential and a few others. Potentially there's a mixture that would be appropriate as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to look for a motion that the public meeting report prepared by the Planning Services Department dated January 10th be received, that the comments from the public with respect to the proposed official plan amendment submitted by Infrastructure Ontario be received, and that staff consider such comments as been provided by council. Councillor Knoll, thank you for the motion. Does anyone object? Not seeing any objection, that carries. Thank you, everybody. Okay, we had a good first use of the new process. I think it was a successful rehearsal. And now we're going to try the same procedure on a related application. And we're going to hear from Eric Sausalea again. And the staff writing this particular file will be Trish Collingwood. So, Madam Clerk, Mr. Sausalea, please begin your presentation.
Go to raise the table again.
Look how adept you got already.
All right, thanks. Can you hear me? If the mic works. Well, Mayor Burton, council members, members of the public, my name's Eric Sausalea. I'm a planner with GSP Group for Infrastructure Ontario for an amendment, for an official plan amendment that we submitted on behalf of Infrastructure Ontario for lands to on the east and west side of Trafalgar Road, south of the Highway 407. So as I indicated, the site is right along the 407, and both properties subject to the official plan amendment are 53 hectares in area, and they are both currently vacant. As demonstrated on this map, the area is adjacent to the 407 and GO carpool lot. And I guess the western site is bisected by the new William Halton Parkway. So this illustrative concept is not being submitted for approval, but it's a demonstration of how the introduction of residential uses and the range of employment uses could be supported on the site. The number of buildings and floor plates, the amount of parking will be further determined during the future draft plan of subdivision, zoning bylaw amendment applications, and site plan approval applications by the first future purchaser of these lands. All right. This site is designated Trafalgar Corridor, or Urban Core Area 1 in the North Oakville Secondary Plan. This designation permits a variety of employment uses at higher density, but doesn't include residential uses as in more southern sections of the Trafalgar corridor. The official plan amendment seeks to add residential uses as a permitted use, as well as the potentially increasing building heights to facilitate a mixed-use community. The zoning bylaw, applicable zone is the future development zone. And this is a placeholder zone that will need to be amended to permit the type of development proposed by the proposed requested official plan amendment application. This will be subject to future zoning bylaw amendment applications, and the purchaser of the site will be responsible for that. So we had a virtual public meeting on March 30th, 2022, prior to the submission of the OPA application, and it was held jointly with Argo Lands, who are proposing a similar application, and they're the next item on the agenda. So at the public information meeting, had a peak of 9 attendees, including previous councillors Parmar and Sandhu, as well as members of the IO and Argo teams. The public information meeting began with an overview presentation of what was being proposed, followed by a question and answer period. And questions were asked regarding the mixed-use nature of the forthcoming OPA, as well as the planning work that was undertaken as part of the secondary plan, and the location of schools. So over the last number of years, we're seeing a trend away from the standalone office parks, and office developers and tenants want to be in a more mixed-use environment and proximate to additional transit and additional amenities. Future bus transit line is proposed along Trafalgar Road, and residential use would support more 24/7 activities along that line. In addition, the 407 Transitway is planned to run along the 407, Highway 407, as a dedicated higher order transit route. And there's a station location planned for the west side of Trafalgar, where the current Go Bus station and the commuter parking lot is, their carpooling lot is. Additionally, the growth plan directs the creation of complete communities. Oops, sorry, I'm just. And the addition of residential uses is in keeping with provincial changes to increase the housing supply through and would assist the town in achieving its housing target under Bill 23. This in combination with real estate trends, planning policy, and future transit makes this site an ideal location for a mix of uses, including residential. Going to the conclusion, the application for the official plan amendment proposes to introduce residential uses to the urban core, Trafalgar Urban Core Area 1 designation. The proposed official plan amendment that's attached to this agenda, this evening's agenda, includes site-specific policies, which include policy direction for future technical studies, for future development applications, which includes traffic impact studies, land use compatibility studies, urban design guidelines, or brief, and as well as a functional servicing and stormwater management plan. And as indicated, the future draft plan of subdivision, rezoning, and site plan applications will be made by the future purchasers of the sites. And as I said, you know, the proposed official plan is consistent with market trends that we're seeing in employment lands particularly along the 407 corridor. And it is necessary to develop them in a transit-oriented manner that facilitates the creation of complete communities. So thank you for your time, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir, for your presentation. Council, we have a registered delegation being Russ Cheeseman, who is a municipal law planner, and a municipal law member of the bar, I'm trying to say, and a registered planner. He's a full-force individual, so to speak. Do you have questions for this gentleman? Would you like to move to the next delegation? Madam Clerk, would you, thank you, Mr. Salazar, and Madam Clerk, would you, oh, sorry, Councilor O'Meara, there you are.
Thank you, Your Worship. With the last delegation, we sort of skipped away from asking the presenter any questions and went right to giving staff issues to go through. So if we're okay to ask the presenter questions about the application after the delegations, I'm fine with waiting, but I noticed last time we were just kind of directing stuff towards staff.
The goal of the meeting is to build a list, for staff to build a list. It's not to debate the application. And I only seek to serve council's need to, get its work done and do it in an efficient and effective way. I recommend that if you have questions for the presenter that you ask them now.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I mean, it's, I think with the way we're doing this now, yes, it's important to get a list, but I think for many residents in Oakville, this will be the first and only time they get to hear from the presenter about why the application and have questions answered, or even find out more about this. And I'm curious to do that, not just sort of have staff ship off and get those answers, and then the people don't get to see how the sausage is made. And I think that's kind of important a little bit here. So I appreciate the latitude. I do have a question with regards to the relationship between, so you're rezoning this property in order to sell it to a prospective developer. Is that what's happening, or have you already entered into an arrangement with Argo? And can you maybe just clarify on the relationship with who's going to be developing this property and who owns it and who's purchasing and selling?
Okay, well, first of all, the application is for an official plan amendment, not a zoning bylaw amendment. And it's IO's intention to sell the lands on the open market. We did, given that Argo is an adjacent landowner, we did coordinate, the preparation of and they're asking for a similar amendment. We did coordinate with them in terms of preparing the overall land use plan so that, the roads aligned and all that kind of thing. And we had a joint public information meeting prior to submitting the applications.
Okay, that makes more sense. And then I guess my last question is just with regards to the changes the province is making to try and make not just housing, but affordable housing as one of the only levels of government that can actually control the land value. Is IO doing anything to ensure that they will be selling not just at the very most maximum amount of money they can get, but to ensure that there will be affordable housing on taxpayer-owned land when these deals go through?
Typically, they don't do that. Like, they sell it on the open market. But I can take it back to the IO team and see if there's any appetite for that.
I would love to see if there's an appetite from the province for affordable housing. That would be fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor O'Meara. Madam Clerk, if council permits, we'd like to hear from the next delegation.
So the next delegation is Russell Cheeseman, and he is virtual, so we will bring him on board.
Thank you. Mr. Cheeseman, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Good evening, Your Worship, and members of Council, my name is Russ Cheeseman. I'm here this evening speaking on behalf of my clients Star Oak Developments Limited, Mel Oak Developments Inc., and Mel Oak Developments North Limited Ltd. Star Oak Developments Limited owns lands immediately adjacent to the IO properties along Burnham Thorpe and William Holton Parkway. I have submitted a letter on behalf of Star Oak, which should be in your package. I hope it is, dated January the 10th, 2023. We haven't had any participation in this process up till now. We weren't in attendance at the developers public meeting, and don't know why that was the case, but being that we are an adjoining neighbor. My concerns that I've set out in the letter are the fact that these lands right now are not contemplated for any residential development whatsoever. My client, Star Oak Developments Limited, is in the business of building employment lands and building unemployment lands. Star Oak's lands are currently designated future development, the way these lands are currently zoned. And we are in an approved draft plan, but we're waiting for some servicing studies that have to be done in order to figure out how the Joshua Creek 7 sub-watershed area is going to function and whether it's going to function appropriately. And so what we're doing is in that exercise.
So Russ, you were
Yes.
you were on mute for quite a while. You may want to start over on this point.
All right, so all I'm trying to say is I'm reflecting what's in my letter of January the 10th. We are part and parcel of the developers group up in North Oakville that have been working to get these lands up for and ready for development. We are future development, and we're waiting for completion of the studies that are necessary to satisfy the town with respect to the Joshua Creek 7 sub-watershed area, because things have to work properly in order to develop the lands. I just want to go on record as saying the province has not been, to my knowledge, part and parcel of that group and hasn't participated to date in those servicing studies that are necessary to overcome the servicing constraints that are there today. Star Oak, being an adjoining landowner that has plans to develop these lands as they are currently designated for employment uses in this area, have concerns with the introduction of residential uses in close proximity to them. We've got concerns. We don't know enough about the development to actually put them out there, but that's one of the things we want to have the staff look at, is that compatibility between, if you're going to introduce some residential development, how's it going to be, is it going to be compatible with the employment uses? Because what we don't want to see is in residential uses introduced into the area that would impact our ability to move forward and develop these lands for employment uses. I'd also like to say that we've got concerns with respect to a sanitary and water capacity in the area. We want to make sure if the land use is changed, that all of those services are looked at to ensure that they will function properly in the future if any land use change occurs. And similarly, we have some concerns about transportation, because these are our lands are intended to be employment lands. This was intended to be a business area of the town when it was put into the official plan. There will be trucks. There will be. That's the reason that these lands are designated employment up there, is because they do have proximity to the 407 and the interchange. And we want to make sure that, of course, nothing happens down the road that would make any of our lands or any of the lands that are designated up there go tilt. For want of a better word. We just wanted to make sure that they function appropriately. So those are my concerns expressed on behalf of my clients. Mel Oak and both Mel Oak companies' properties are located on Trafalgar Road, south of Burnham Thorpe on the west side. Their concerns aren't so much with respect to the proximity of residential uses, but more tied to the servicing of the area to ensure that the services that are there and that are needed are in place, and that they're adequate so that all the lands that there can develop in an appropriate manner. Those are my submissions to you this evening.
Thank you very much. Let me see if I can summarize them. I think I've heard three. The first is, will any purchaser cooperate and participate with the North Oakville group that is overseeing the extension of servicing throughout the territory of North Oakville over the last, I hesitate to say, 3 decades of planning work that's been going on there? And the second one is to be alert to any sterilizing of employment uses by the D guidelines as a result of introducing residential next to employment. And what I had for the third is really, I guess, a continuation of the second, which is the concern about the compatibility between the truck volume in some employment type areas and a residential area. Have I captured them, or did I miss any?
You missed one, sir, which is respect to the servicing of the area, both sanitary, water, and stormwater management, just to ensure that they're adequate to allow for the introduction of additional uses that were contemplated.
Yes, thank you. I intended my remark about the purchaser being, joining or cooperating with what used to be called NOCB with regard to servicing, I had meant to say. But yes, so the servicing and the let's call it the threat of sterilizing an employment use because of nearby residential, and the other compatibility issue of trucks. Does that capture it, I think?
Yes, it does, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing those forward. I'm sure they'll be helpful to everyone concerned. Madam Clerk, you have another delegation?
I have 2 more delegations that have signed up. The next delegation is Robert Kanceljak.
Well, bring him in. Oh, here he is. Thank you for bringing yourself in. Or you can dispense with Zoom.
Well, good evening, Mayor Burton, members of council, members of the public. My name's Robert Kanceljak, and I'm here representing myself and my father. We own the property of land on the northeast corner of Burnhamthorpe and Trafalgar, directly south of the said lands that we're talking about. In general, I just want to say we don't really have opposition to what's being proposed there, but we do have one concern in that in the concept drawing that GSP has proposed, there's a road that cuts right through our land in half, and we're concerned because basically that might limit the investment potential of that property when we want to sell it down the road. So we just want to voice our concerns about that, and if that can be amended somehow, if maybe a court could be done above us, and then that land can be untouched for now.
Well, my advice, for what it's worth, is we're not approving that concept plan.
Okay.
And you now have an opportunity to open discussions with IO.
Okay.
And I think if I were in your shoes, I would do that.
Okay.
So that the next time they do a concept plan, it's a friendlier plan.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming forward. Better to identify these issues early than late. The next delegation, please.
The next delegation is Sajid Anjum.
Welcome, Mr. Anjum. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you, Mr. Rob Burton, Mayor, and all. I appreciate I got the chance to raise and share my concern. As a resident of Oakville, I also visit Al-Falah Islamic Center with my family and kids. Of course, that is a wonderful cultural center for our kids. And this is the hub for Oakville, Milton, Burlington, as well as Mississauga. So myself, I have experience during a Friday prayer or sometime Eid prayer. I noticed some of our fellow citizens, due to our traffic, they felt something, hardship. And from our teaching, I learned, the way we give the smiling face, that is a kind of charity. So in the same way, if I remove any hurdle from the way, it is also kind of charity. So I just wanted to request you, there is a new built road, like behind Alfla Center, like front there is a road, Berhanthrop, right side Trafalgar, and the one behind the road, newly built, I forgot the name. So if you have, if you want to show the generosity and openness, because Oakville is known for that, so we can have a road behind Alfla Center in order to get rid of the traffic scenario. So that's my request I wanted to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for sharing your suggestion.
You're welcome, sir.
Madam Clerk?
That is the last delegation, unless there is someone else in the audience wishing to speak.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public here in chamber with information to share? Yes, sir. Would you please come forward, share your name and your information?
Thank you, Mayor Burton and all the councillors. My name is Khalid Shuja, and I am the project manager of Al-Falah Islamic Center. So we welcome the new development in the area, but my concern is that we are still in the vacuum. There are two roads bisecting our property, and I have been requesting to the city to let us know, what is going on. Every Friday, about 1,000 people come every Friday. And our community center is busy every day. Like 200 to 300 people come every day for 5 times a day. And we are still waiting the answer. We need to know the two roads are bisecting our property. One is to our school and one is to our mosque. And it is raising some concern to our community too. So we need to know what's going on. That's all.
I'm aware that your land is not part of this application in front of us, but I also, through several meetings with other leaders of the masjid, I have been aware of your anxiety. And what I can promise you is that at the earliest possible date, we'll arrange a meeting for all of you and our planning officials to walk through what's in store and what's not, to try to dispel the rumors and the misapprehensions. How's that?
Yeah, that will be great. It will be great help to us, and it will be, we would be relaxed, once we have a meeting with you guys.
Okay.
It is not a part of this, but I can see it is just mentioned at the side of that road.
Well,
so
this application has nothing to do with your road and isn't an application for a road. I think what we need is a meeting with all of the officials of the masjid.
Yeah.
And because it's, it becomes broken telephone when we tell one and they tell two and they tell the,
Yeah,
So let's get everybody together in the same room.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, any other delegations?
That is the last delegation.
Alrighty. Council, may I ask for a motion? If I may, I'm going to read it. Any objection? Well, this is the time.
I just, through your worship, just wanted to know if I could add to the issues list.
Yes, you can.
I just wanted to build on Councillor Amara's request for what can the province do for affordable housing, but I'd also like to know if there's any tools the town could explore. I know this is an OPA, but as far as inclusionary zoning goes, is there anything we could explore, seeing this is a transit-friendly development, and this is what the province has asked us to do. So if we could just add that to the issue list, please. Thank you.
Councillor Hazard-Thiel.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Can we add to the, one of the things we used to be able to get was an image of what bordered around the properties. And it's a little, tonight was a little bit difficult to see, okay, so who Mr. Cheeseman represents, where they are, and how the employment uses are defined. So I guess my issue is, can we get clarity on what those specific lands are specifically within the employment designations, what their use is? And the language is a little different in the north plan versus the south, so from a clarity perspective, I'm assuming prestige industrial uses still includes warehouses. And if it does, can consideration be, an issue is the trucks bordering on residential? And what is the appropriate scale and intensity? Because our current plan doesn't differentiate on the size of a warehouse, as everyone knows. So I think that clarity would be helpful when it comes back.
Right. I thought we had made it pretty clear that the delegation from Mr. Cheeseman was specifically that concern about trucks. And my own suggestion around this issue is we've had professional advice from legal and planners that scale and intensity is hard to do in the Ontario system. And my instinct in the face of that advice, my instinct has been, well, let's not allow it if it's potentially a problem. So
if that is in fact the case, Mayor Burton, then that would solve the problem. But until somebody tells me that we get there, I'm going to keep pushing that we have a scale and intensity issue, and the province needs to hear us, and we need to solve it within our zoning, because it is impacting the ability of individuals to enjoy their land.
all true. This is an application for an official plan amendment, not zoning. And the issue is not what zoning will apply. It is what designation, what land use designation will apply. And if you don't apply a designation that permits warehouses, your scale and intensity issue is avoided there rather than becoming a fight later. That was the nature of my advice on the matter. But it's not what zoning, I mean, basically zoning, we learned over the years, must conform to the official plan, must conform upward. And so if the designation permits warehouses in the zoning, then you'll get them. And if it, take the difference we recently discussed between office employment and business employment on the Sherwood property, that was what was driving my suggestion that we choose office, since the applicant had only talked about office. And we could give him what he asked for, as opposed to, what he verbally asked for, as opposed to what he asked for in writing. So it's just a matter of trying to call him on what he's saying. But anyway, all of that will be sorted out. I think the truck issue is clearly understood. I think there's another option in planning where we might be able to limit building size, which might go to some bit of scale and intensity. But, you know, if you made a whole bunch of small buildings, say you had 100 acres of warehouse land and you had a rule that they had to be small, you add up all those small warehouses and you've still got a lot of scale. So really, I think it comes down to the designation. It's up at the higher level where we cure this for our people, is what I'm trying to give you to understand here.
Thank you for trying to help me with that. And so I guess on the issues list, if you could just clarify what prestige industrial uses in the lands are, so we have that clarity in the document, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, the delegation was concerned about not having any of the D guideline rules push back his employment opportunities. And so the two of you are dovetailing perfectly. So, Councillor Nanda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. I think this is actually an important conversation that we were having, and I see the reason that Mr. Cheeseman came out for Star Oak because of issues that we've already had in the past with the trucks. We're living through it right now. So I do think that this is a very important point for us to see. And what they're requesting, I think, is important because having employment lands next to residential areas and having issues such as trucks is a real issue, and we're living through it right now. So I do think that's important. I do have a couple of other points. In terms of infrastructure support, and this is a conversation that I've also had with Alpha Law and neighbors on Burnham Thorpe, that if we could check for infrastructure support into sanitary and into water, that if this is built, and this will be both for Argo and for IO, that there will be infrastructure support for the neighbors on the Burnham Thorpe side, if that's something that'll be supported. Servicing, and also a big one, which is support for community. So we have been discussing schools and community centers. This is a large scale. IO is proposing 5,000 units. Argo is proposing 3,000 units. That's a community in itself. I think we have to have a discussion around what complete communities are. I feel like based on how North Oakville has been developed over time, there seems to be different definitions of what complete communities are. I think once we go forward with this, it's going to be very important to see how this is developed, how zoning site plans, I know that's far ahead right now. But in terms of what a complete community means, I think this is going to be important to look at the infrastructure that needs to be put in place to ensure that it is complete. So if we could just have a couple of those points put in, and that would be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nanda. Those are excellent points. Ms. Collingwood, are you ready to check the list?
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I have 9 issues. So I have a request to hear back on whether the province will entertain selling a portion of the lands to an affordable housing developer. Are there any tools that the town could consider in terms of inclusionary zoning, considering this is a transit corridor? Will the purchaser of the lands cooperate with NOCB and/or the landowners group for future servicing works for the lands as well as the adjacent lands? Clarity on what prestige employment uses are and providing a visual of the subject lands and transition of uses to adjacent lands to better evaluate the compatibility of uses. Regard for sterilizing the employment lands based on the D6 guidelines. Regard for the land use compatibility between employment uses that generate truck traffic and future residential uses. The owner of 273 Burnham Thorpe is looking for more information with regards to the road through the property. That might not be an issue, but it is something that has come up with regards to the application as well in our discussions of road alignment. The Al-Falah Islamic Center and school is requesting that their role in the community be considered going forward with their, and we have had a meeting with the Al-Falah Center, but I am noting that an issue with continuing those meetings going forward so that they have full awareness of the development. And finally, complete community development. I'm not sure how to word this. Complete community development definitions and what that means for the subject lands to ensure that the infrastructure needed is required going forward.
I think that captures it. Really, at bottom, ROP and the province's own documents use this term, community, complete community, and I'm not aware of a definition being offered by the province as to what that means. And the word community itself is a very elastic concept. It applies to the whole town and it applies to a neighborhood. So it'll be an interesting issue to be plumbed in the staff report. We're going to do that. Eventually, we're going to do that. So I would like to solicit a mover for the motion, but let me read it, that the public meeting report be received, that the comments from the public be received, and that the staff consider such comments as were provided by council and just listed by Ms. Collingwood. And Councillor Nanda, thank you. I'd be glad to take that motion from you. Any objection to the motion? There being none, congratulations, Councillor Nanda, that carries. Next. We're getting better at this because that was the second rehearsal of the new procedure. And now we get to try a third one. We have a presentation. This is the public meeting report for an official plan amendment by Argo Trafalgar Corporation, which we just heard mention of. And this presentation is from Allison Bucking from Corsiac Urban Planning. And Trish Collingwood is again the town staffer, the senior staffer on this file. And if anyone is watching the live stream of the meeting and wishes to participate, they can by calling 905-815-6095 to be connected to the meeting and take your turn. Ms. Bucking, thank you for appearing. We look forward to your presentation.
I'm sorry, do I have control of my slides or do I hit next slide? Down here? Thank you. Okay, great. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and members of the public. My name is Allison Bucking. I'm from Corsiac Urban Planning. I'm here on behalf of Argo Trafalgar Corporation to speak.
Ms. Bucking, on behalf of council, we need you to speak with more projection.
Yes.
Or your words will be lost and we won't hear them.
My apologies. I'll get a little closer here. Good evening. My name is Allison Bucking. I'm a planner from Corsiac Urban Planning. I'm here on behalf of Argo Trafalgar Corporation to speak in regard to the proposed official plan amendment application on their lands, which are located on the northeast corner of the intersection of Trafalgar Road and Burnham Thorpe Road. On this slide is an aerial photo which shows the subject site and its surrounding context. The site consists of two properties, which as stated previously are located on the northeast corner of the intersection of Trafalgar Road and Burnham Thorpe Road, and they are bisected via William Halton Parkway. The site is approximately 12.45 hectares in size and is currently vacant. Lands are surrounded by the Al-Falah Islamic Center to the east, followed by agricultural uses designated for employment and mixed use. To the west is Trafalgar Road, followed by lands managed by Infrastructure Ontario, which are also subject to an official plan amendment application to permit residential uses on their lands designated Trafalgar Urban Core Area 1. Additional uses to the west include the Halton Region Water Tower, Ren's Pets Oakville, agricultural uses, and the Star Oak development. To the north are additional lands managed by Infrastructure Ontario, followed by the future 407 Transitway and the associated Trafalgar 407 Transitway Station and Highway 407. And to the south is Burnham Thorpe Road, followed by the Vic Hatfield's Golf and Learning Center and agricultural uses which are identified for future development. On this slide is an illustrative framework plan. Argo is proposing to amend the North Oakville East Secondary Plan to permit residential and mixed-use permissions on their lands to facilitate the creation of a compact mixed-use community, to support planned higher-order transit services in the area, including the 407 Transitway and the Trafalgar Bus Rapid Transit Service. As spoken to in the previous presentation, the reason why we are speaking this amendment is over the past few years, it's been a trend away from business park developments, which is currently what's permitted in this area in the North Oakville East Secondary Plan. We're seeing that developers and office tenants are preferring more mixed-use environments with additional amenities and transit. COVID-19 has further exacerbated this shift throughout the GTA and has shifted the nature of work itself with increased work from home opportunities. The proposed amendment recognizes this market shift and allows the community to be developed with a mix of uses. It should be noted that the framework plan on this slide is for illustrative purposes only, and a future zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision application will be submitted to determine the block sizes, the land uses, the built form, the road network, servicing, and the limits of the natural heritage system. On this slide is an excerpt of the land use schedule from the North Oakville East Secondary Plan. The lands subject to this application are currently designated Trafalgar Urban Core Area 1, which permits employment, institutional, and commercial uses only. The existing land use designation does not permit residential uses, and as such, an official plan amendment application is required. The proposed official plan amendment application would add residential and mixed-use permissions to the existing land use designations on the site, which is similar to the Trafalgar Urban Core areas 3 and 4th that are further south. The official plan amendment does not apply to lands designated natural heritage system or employment. On this slide is an excerpt from the North Oakville zoning bylaw. Currently, the site is zoned future development, which only permits existing uses. A future zoning bylaw amendment application is required and will be submitted along with a future draft plan of subdivision application to develop the lands. A joint public information meeting was held virtually with Infrastructure Ontario on March 30th, 2022. It was attended by 7 members of the public, both Ward 7 councillors at the time, the town file planner Tricia Collingwood, and representatives from Argo and Infrastructure Ontario. These were touched on in the previous presentation, but most of the comments received were clarification questions and did not require revisions to the plan. One attendee did raise concerns regarding the height proposed adjacent to the Al Fala Islamic Center. We did clarify that in the North Oakville East Secondary Plan, the maximum height currently permitted in that area is 15 stories. Through the future zoning bylaw amendment application and draft plan subdivision application, we will ensure that an appropriate transition is provided to the adjacent land use. External to the public information meeting, the Al Fala Islamic Center did raise concern regarding the road locations through their site and the concept plan. We met with them and we will work with them through the draft plan and subdivision application to ensure an appropriate road alignment is provided. In conclusion, the proposal would facilitate a mix of uses and densities required to support planned higher order transit and conforms to provincial and regional planning policy. Further, the proposal sets out the policy framework required to submit a future draft plan and subdivision application and is coordinated with the adjacent landowner. We will work with staff to address all items for consideration received. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I do have a question right off the bat.
Yes.
You said, and I quote, an appropriate road alignment. What is an appropriate road alignment?
Appropriate road alignment, it would just be to ensure that we provide a road alignment that they're satisfied with, and that also it meets the North Oakville East Secondary Plan.
So did you have the impression from meeting with them that they were comfortable with any road going through their land?
Not currently.
All right. So is there any way that they have to, well, I shouldn't ask you, I'll ask staff, but, you know, I'm troubled by the expression appropriate road alignment when they clearly don't want a road of any alignment. And so I would flag that as an issue right off the top for the planners. Council, any? All right, let's turn to the delegations from the public. Madam Clerk.
We have one listed delegation, and that's Russell Cheeseman.
Right, Mr. Cheeseman, welcome back, if you are back. I don't see him on the screen yet, but. There he is. Welcome back,
Hear me
Mr.
now, sir?
Cheeseman.
Thank you. Good evening again, Your Worship and members of council. I'm here again on behalf of Star Oak Developments Limited, Mel Oak Developments Inc., and Mel Oak Developments North Limited. I'm going to be short and sweet. My concerns with respect to this application are much the same as they were for the previous application, save and except, I guess, for the issue of the separation distance between employment and residential uses, since these lands are located on the other side of Trafalgar Road, obviously. So that would not be as big a concern for my client. But in terms of truck traffic, et cetera, servicing, stormwater management, all of those things we think have to be looked at, and to ensure, again, that with this development and obviously with an increased intensity of use, it doesn't cause the entire portion of the North Oakville secondary plan to go tilt in any way. And we, are prepared to discuss this with the applicants and with the town staff, and to be of any assistance that we can be in bringing this to a resolution.
Thank you very
Those
much.
are my
I'm
thoughts.
sure they will regard that as a welcome offer. Any questions for Mr. Cheeseman? Thank you, Russ.
Thank you.
Any members of the public in the council chamber with information for council on this matter? Any others on the phone? No. I'll confine it to table then. Trish, what have you gleaned for your list here?
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I wasn't clear on whether the issues that Mr. Cheeseman was including for IO are also to be repeated for this site, but I intended they would be.
Yes.
Yeah.
He had a reduced concern about the conflict between residential and employment, but I would remind staff of our similar episode with a concern like this on Tremaine, when we had a bit of a to and fro with our neighboring city over putting residential so close to our employment land that it would reduce the hypothetical use of our employment land, if you recall. So since that was over a road, and this could conceivably be over a road, I think I would put his issue on even if he doesn't want to, but I took him to say it's still an issue, just reduced.
Okay, I'm ready then.
And then my issue is, what is an appropriate road alignment? And more than that, I'd like to understand how anybody can force a road. I mean, I guess the town could force a road through there if we wanted to, but why would we want to? It's a stable, established, vital, important part of one of our fastest growing communities, the Muslim faith, and it's a giant success. So I don't know why, I can't believe that we'd want to interfere with that. So the issue for me is it goes beyond this application. It's what are we thinking in terms of the facilitating the longevity of a valued institution?
So I've captured these issues with the following. The road alignment impacting the Al-Falah Islamic Center is an issue. Request to consider an alternative road alignment that will allow the center and school to continue to operate. Then I go on further with capturing Mr. Cheeseman's issues the way I wrote them for IO. Will the purchaser of the lands cooperate with Knockbean landowners for future servicing works for the lands and adjacent lands? Clarity on what prestige employment uses are, if there are to be any, on the transition at borders. Provide a visual of the subject lands and transition of uses to adjacent land uses, and this would include the Al-Falah Center, to better evaluate the compatibility of uses. Regard for sterilizing the employment lands based on the D6 guidelines, should there be transition on the eastern border of the Argo lands. Regard for the land use compatibility between employment uses that generate truck traffic and future residential uses.
Okay, that's good. On the road alignment, if you could go back to that, could we mention with some in addition to everything else you said, with regard to the growing popularity of this institution and its increasing traffic and parking, those are concerns that we don't want this one applicant to unfairly reduce the future uses of this other landowner. Do you see what I'm trying to say? They have to balance out somehow, I hope. I mean, it is true. I mean, to give you an idea of the growth, we now have 4 masjids that I know of that I've visited personally, and they're all, they're going concerns, well attended, and I see a need for more growing around us every day.
So if I were to say request to consider an alternative road alignment that will allow the center and its growing popularity in the community to continue to operate until such time as they bring forward future development plans for their institution?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. We don't want to beggar one landowner at the expense of another, basically. I know that's not planning language, but maybe it captures the sentiment I'm trying to express.
Yes.
All right, so the motion is as before, that the report, oh, I beg your pardon. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councillor Nanda and then Councillor McNeese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just for clarification on what you were just discussing, my conversation with Alpha Law, and I think what they had suggested was that they want a road coming in from William Halton Way to the Islamic Center. So I just want to get a little clarification on what we're discussing right now in terms of appropriate road alignment. Is that not what they're asking for right now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. What I heard in the previous matter was an opportunity to sit down with representatives of the Islamic Center, with the landowners as well as staff. I think that would be the appropriate opportunity to work through what access could look like, whether it's from Burnhamthorpe or William Halton, and how the overall site could redevelop in the future should the center wish to do so, without unduly infecting the development potential of the two sites.
Okay. Councillor McNeese.
Through your worship, I just wanted to add my comments from the previous delegation to this property as well, just around any potential for affordable housing, whether it's through inclusionary zoning or other tools. I know we've talked about inclusionary zoning at Midtown at higher densities, but how could we apply that to, seems like it'll be more of a low mid density here. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Burton, I can include that issue as I wrote it for the IO property. So are there any tools that the town could consider in terms of inclusionary zoning, considering this is a transit corridor?
I'd like to add one more. These two sites, maybe you could go back and add this one to the other one as well. It seems to me these two sites might very well serve the community planning permit system. Can we evaluate whether an issue would be, is this an appropriate area for the community planning permit system? I'm hoping Councillor McNeese is smiling happily at that.
Yes, I second that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Burton.
All right. So now, we need a motion to receive the report and the comments from the public, and that staff consider such comments as have been provided by council. Councillor Nanda, thank you for that. Perhaps we'll give Councillor Shi a chance on the minutes. Councillor Shi, I'll take the motion from you. Is there any objection to Councillor Shi's motion? There being none, congratulations. Your motion carries, Councillor. All right, that's 3 times, and we're getting really good at it, I think. You can all be proud of yourselves. So now 6.4 is the public meeting report, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw for Hellberg Properties Limited, and this is at 50 Spears Road. We have presentation from Lindsay Dale Harris of Ballsfields and Ken Brooks from BDP Quadrangle, which and Paul Barat, our senior planner, will be the file carrier. And Ms. Dale Harris, welcome back. Good to see all of you again. We have at least 3 registered delegations, and we'll poll the public for more when we get to that point in the meeting. Ms. Dale Harris, we look forward to your presentation.
Yes, I just need to be some clarification on how we move I just do that?
Just that.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Good evening, Mayor Burton, councillors, and thank you to the tenants and residents and for the members of the public who are participating perhaps virtually this evening. And we have met with the community prior to submitting our applications for an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment, but we are here, as the mayor has pointed out, to listen, We're early in the process, and we're here to listen to your comments and your concerns and to provide the list of important things for your planning staff to consider. My name is Lindsay Dale Harris. I'm a partner with Bousfields. We are the planning consultants for the owner and applicant, Hellberg Properties Limited. Hellberg Properties is a long-term developer and operator of dedicated rental apartment units in the Greater Toronto Area. The proposal, which we will present tonight, is for a dedicated rental building, which Hellberg intends to own and operate for many years to come. And I'm particularly pleased to be joined this evening by Petra Schadeberg-Herman, who represents the owner. Members of the consulting team include the architect, Ken Brooks, Nadine from the property management, a project manager. There's a transportation expert here this evening also to answer any questions, and they're from BA. So tonight, I'm going to present an overview of the planning and the development context, and then Ken will lead you through the actual architectural plans for the proposed development. And then following the presentation, we will be pleased to answer any questions which council may have.
Ms. Dale Harris, before you proceed with that, could you just inform the council and the public whether any of this has, I mean, I'm not used to the idea that we approve the architecture of the project. So if you could make clear the purpose of presenting the architecture and whether or not it, just how big a commitment is it that the architecture will be the architecture? Do you understand the?
Yes, I certainly understand the question, Mr. Mayor, and I think it's very important. The architecture is a very important part of our presentation this evening, and how the building looks and how we're providing for appropriate transitions to the neighbors to the south and to the neighbors to the east and west, and how we relate to Kerr Street are all very important parts of the presentation.
And but there are commitments?
There are commitments. And the zoning bylaw we have requested actually ensures that the architecture, not the exact design, but the building massing and the location and the heights and how it relates to the property, they are all going to be established in the zoning bylaw. We're committed to it, and we're committed to submitting a site plan.
Okay, the bugaboo in the past for 20-odd years has been we're constantly told we can't tell you how it should look. And so I was trying to tease out the distinction between height and mass and looks, because we've seen some unusual looks.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think that the owner representative can speak to it tonight, but they were very careful to select BDP Quadrangle as the architects. And they selected Quadrangle because of how their buildings look and how sensitive they are to design, massing, and materials. So I think it's important. Should I continue? Oh, does it?
Yeah, I think you can start now. Madam Clerk, would you, Councillor Duddick?
Your Worship, the clock is still staying at 8:21. I just want to make sure the clerk starts it again.
I was doing that, but thank you. Madam Clerk, would you restart the clock? And we'll let the delegation start. Your introductions and the questions were free.
Okay, the time is ticking on. So the first slide shows you 50 Spears. It's located on the south side of Spears Road, and it's between Kerr Street and the 16 Mile Creek. And the slide places it when it's within its broader context, goes over to Dorval and over to Trafalgar, and it shows how it's got excellent access to the QEW at the Dorval Drive interchange and also at the Trafalgar Road interchange. Most importantly, I think, for this site is how close it is to the Oakville GO station, and those circles show 500 and 800 meters to the GO station, and you can see the site is within that 800-meter range, and that's the range that the province identifies as the important distance for determining a major transit station area. It's close to the 16 Mile Creek, which, as you all know, has great recreational facilities both to the south and to the north. It's a rectangular-shaped property, and so we're zooming in on the property itself. It's about 0.41 hectares in size. It's well set back from Spears Road, and it's accessed by a driveway, which is also providing access to the apartment buildings to the west and to the east. And these apartment buildings establish that high-density feel along the south side of Spears Road in this location. To the immediate south is the Oakwood Public School, the playground, and you can see the baseball diamond. And there are also houses to the south and east, and they're on Bartus Drive. And Ken will describe in his presentation how the proposed development is going to provide for an increased setback to the residential and school usage to the south from the apartment building, and how it's going to provide a safe and well-designed pedestrian and bicycle access from north end of Bartos up all the way south up to Spears Road and down to the school. And I think there has been an application, as you're aware, at the corner of Spears and Kerr in the northwest corner, and that provides for multiple towers, which are up to 28 stories in height. Now, in terms of the official plan context, in the regional official plan includes it within a secondary regional node, and as you know, that is a strategic growth area, and that's where development densities are anticipated, particularly because of transit. Kerr Street is a regional priority transit corridor, and on the right, you can see the major transit station area around the Oakville GO station. Now, that doesn't include the site, but you can see how close it is to the GO station. We then turn to the Town of Oakville official plan, which I'm sure you know well. This reflects the boundaries of the Kerr Village land use area. It shows the high-density residential area on Spears Road, and it shows we have identified the increase in units, which we are seeking from 885 units per hectare to 750 units per hectare. And I'd just like to mention that in this area, some sites have a unit per hectare restriction. Other sites, such as the northwest corner of Kerr and Spears, they don't deal with units per hectare at all. They're talking about densities and heights. They're not talking about units per hectare. So it depends what color you're in, whether or not units per hectare is considered important consideration. Turning then to the subject site location in the zoning bylaw, you can see it's zoned RH. And RH, we've asked for some changes to the RH zone, particularly with respect to setbacks, and those are to provide for the built form that Ken is going to describe to you. We've asked for reductions in parking to reflect current standards and the proximity of the site to the GO station. We've requested increases in coverage. And just remember that now all the parking is enclosed, all the garbage is enclosed, all the bicycle parking is enclosed. So we're restricting, we've got a larger building, but many of those uses are now going to be completely enclosed. And height, there is no question we are asking for an increase in height. We think that height is very supportable in this location in terms of shadowing, in terms of overview, and in terms of compatibility. I will now turn it over to Ken, and given him enough minutes to describe this proposal, which is 314 rental units, of which 44% are going to be two-bedroom or larger, and they're all rental.
Thank you. So I wanted to discuss a few of the issues just regarding the site plan that you see in this diagram here. And I just want to bring to the council's attention that where most of the existing residential towers in this area come straight down to grade, our proposed building includes a series of setbacks that make a gradual transition into the surrounding neighborhoods. We've also located the building towards the north side of the site along Spears Road, and this came from a recommendation that we had with an early conversation with the Town of Oakville staff. This allows the proposed building to help define the street edge and provide a generous outdoor amenity on the south side of the site. We've also consolidated the vehicular entry point to a single curb cut along Spears Road that creates an improved pedestrian experience along this stretch of the road. The building entry is located near the sidewalk at the northeast corner of the site, again, sort of bringing the building right up to the street, making it part of the public experience. And we've also greatly improved the quality of the pedestrian connection between Bartos Drive and Spears Road. And this is indicated by a blue arrow along our west property line. You're going to see more of that in the upcoming illustration. We've also accommodated lots of opportunities for green roofs and landscaped outdoor amenity spaces on the top of the podium. Here's a view looking east along Spears Road, showing how our proposal fits in with the immediate context. It's centrally located within a cluster of existing high-rise residential buildings along this stretch of Spears Road. Our tower actually has a smaller footprint than the existing condominiums on the northeast corner of Carr and Spears, and the east and west elevations have been angled to give the plan a slightly sort of sculptural character, and also reduces the visual profile of the building, making it a lean and elegant tower in this location. We've also set back the upper two levels of the tower to give the building a more distinctive presence on the sideline. Again, this came in terms of a recommendation that the town staff had given us in an earlier conversation. We felt that the proposed tower height was a good urban design response due to its central location within this existing cluster of high-rise residential buildings, and also due to its location at a point where Spears Avenue curves up towards the northeast, and that this condition made a good location for a distinct visual marker. Here's a view looking southeast from Spears Road that shows how the proposed building relates to the pedestrian scale. We've located two-story grade-related family-sized suites along the west and south elevations of the building. As mentioned earlier, the entry for the new building has been moved to front directly onto Spears Avenue and is marked with a generous entry canopy. Setbacks from and above this two-story residences is a six-story podium that helps define a well-scaled pedestrian realm along Spears Road. And green roofs above the second-story grade-related suites and the landscape amenity space on the roof of the podium help soften the transition between these elements. We've also suggested warm brick and light-colored precast concrete finishes to the building that give it a sense of solidity, permanence, and design quality. This is a major improvement to the existing conditions where most of the street frontage is largely devoted to parking and vehicle circulation, as you're about to see in the next illustration. So here's a view of the existing conditions along the west side of 50 Spears Road. You can see that most of the site is currently devoted to parking, and in the foreground of this photo, you can also see the state of the current walkway that connects Bartos Drive to Spears Road. This is, of course, a condition that we want to greatly improve. Another condition that we want to improve by our proposal is the current setback conditions between our building and the neighborhood directly to the south of us. Where the current 7-story apartment is only set back 7.5 meters from the property line, the 6-story podium in our proposal is set back roughly 22.5 meters. Now here's a view of our proposed building taken from the same location. You can see that the 2-story grade-related family-sized suites with adjacent landscape private terraces will greatly improve the quality of the pedestrian connections between Bartos Drive and Spears Road. You can also see how we're proposing a gentle transition in building scale and refocusing the public realm from a car-oriented to an inviting pedestrians, creating a pedestrian zone. Now I'd like to hand it over to Lindsay quickly just to address our community engagement to date.
Yes, I just wanted to make it clear that we have met with the tenants. We had a drop-in center in June the 6th. We had a public information meeting before we filed the application on the 21st of June. I think there were over 870 notices was sent out to the residents and the businesses, and 23 people attended the virtual evening meeting. We heard the following issues: parking and road safety, building height, site plan design, the treatment of the existing 50 Spears Road tenants, community engagement, and access to the public school. So our first step in addressing these comments have been as follows. We have provided a compensation package to existing tenants which exceeds any requirements under the Residential Tenancies Act. We've improved pedestrian safety by reducing the number of curb cuts over today's conditions and making the treatment of the access to the driveway safer. We've provided, as Ken has shown, improved pedestrian access to the neighborhood and the school through enhancing the connections to Bartos Drive from the site and from Spears Road, and we've incorporated additional building setbacks and setbacks to minimize the visual impact of the building. Thank you for listening. I'm slightly over, and we're pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your information. Your first question is from the neighborhood, Councillor Dudek and Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation. Both Councillor Chisholm and I were fortunate to attend the public information meetings that you had virtually, which were of great assistance. A few questions I have. One is, I see with the various renderings that you've shown, different perspectives from the public realm. And I believe Nicole will probably be raising this, but when Councillor Chisholm and I had a discussion with West River residents recently, they had raised the fact they had requested a modeling from, say, Queen Mary, so they could get an idea of that wall that you have towards the what you call it, Spears Road edge, sort of a parapet or whatever you want to call it. They were quite concerned as to the impact of that from the visual. The other question maybe I'll just stop at that. Was that ever provided to West River? It was.
Mr. Group presented to you, right? Yes.
Okay,
we
good.
did prepare several views all around the neighborhood.
Okay. Could you provide that to Councillor Chisholm and myself? It would be of assistance. The other is the access on Bartos. Thank you very much for maintaining that pedestrian. It's very important. I have heard, as has Councillor Chisholm, from residents on Bartos, that they're concerned that in the future there might be some plans to make a road connection. We've tried as best we can to assure them that it's pedestrian. What is the actual width of that you're providing? The width of the pedestrian access, do you recall?
It's 2 easements, right?
It is an easement, yeah.
I believe it's in the order of 4 meters across.
4 meters, okay, good. The other thing is you've reduced the parking, okay? And much as I understand the rationale behind it, we continue to have problems in terms of adequate parking for residents. So what is the parking ratio you provided for people residing in a unit?
We've provided 1 space for every unit. That's
just one.
Just one. But some of the units are quite small. There are a few studios which may not need any parking at all. There are, I think the figure was 44% of the units were 2-bedroom or more. But you've got a very large number of smaller units. And those are the units typically we find don't require so much parking. And we have our transportation expert here who could speak specifically to that. But we're always, we're here to listen, and we understand that parking is an issue.
Thank you. The other concern, I think that's paramount, is the traffic concerns. There's currently 11 access points along that stretch going from Kerr over towards the crossing. And I understand you currently have driveway cuts in that area, so that's understandable. The problem is you're compounding the amount of units that are going to be there now, or in the future rather, compared to what is existing. We already have a huge traffic problem in that area in terms of turning left into something and across the road, and it's almost like riding a gauntlet trying to get in and out. Have you made any recommendations regarding any street improvements that you might consider, whether it be medians or right in, right out?
Well, I think those are all very good suggestions, and I know our transportation consultant is talking to the town transportation department and trying to figure out what would be the best way to help alleviate some of the problems you have. There's been no one solution put forward, but we recognize that it is a concern.
Okay. And I just want to say congratulations, or appreciation rather, for the sensitivity to the existing tenants. It's a very, what shall I say, delicate situation. And the way you've managed and have reached out to them and given them assurance as to the length of years they've resided in the building, being compatible with the settlement that you're offering to assist them. I do have problems. They may still not have access to something in the area, but the fact that you're giving that is most appreciated. So thank you.
And I think Nadine, who's here this evening, is really spearhead some of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, just a couple of, Councillor Dudek has covered the majority of issues or challenges we have with our residents and constituents with respect to this development. I guess it's an opinion of mine with respect to parking. When we reduce the parking, and the idea is that because of the GO station, the catchment area, people will walk to the GO station and so forth. I understand that completely, and I think everybody around here understands that. But when the parents come home and Johnny and Carol have to go to soccer or something, they have to get in their car and go. So the basis of, with respect to transportation, I have concerns about the parking, and you said in your presentation about the 2 bedrooms and so forth. And this is one of the challenges we have on affordability, accessibility of living space. And 2 bedrooms is a place that we need to do more and more of. But again, we have 2 working parents, and usually they have 2 cars to get to their work of employment. So I have a concern about the parking. I was wondering, maybe you might want to look at the parking again.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No question, it's been raised by the residents, and now it's been raised by both the councillors.
Well, I guess in Councillor Dudek and myself, what we see with what's happening is that, the idea that the cars are being reduced because we're having massive transportation and active transportation. I'm not totally convinced of that, what you're seeing in the real world now with cars being replaced by electric or gas cars being replaced by electric cars and hybrid cars. I don't see a reduction. I just see them just being replaced. So that's just a matter of opinion. But again, that's something that has further debate in the future. But right now, as we need the parking, and the transportation is very important for us. Not just because of being on the go, but they need their vehicles to get to point A to point B. If Mary has to go to a soccer match up in North Oakville or West Oakville, how do they get there? The second part, I want to ask about this addition at the top of the building. It looks like a big screen or a wall. What is that?
That's
The upper part of the tower, we sculpted the upper part of the tower. Again,
Sorry? I can't hear you.
Sorry. Forgot I need to be in front of this. We sculpted the upper part of the tower. This is from a recommendation we received when we had initial conversations with the Town of Oakville staff. Actually, they wanted something that didn't just sort of cut off at the top. So there is a mechanical penthouse that's up at the top of the building. So that's something that is up in there. But we've also distributed the amenity space in the building, and there are amenity terraces and amenity room that's at the top of the building, as well as we've got some at the top of the podium level, and as well as having some amenity space at the grade level. So that's what's happening towards the top of the building.
So clarity here. This is not just a wall. There's amenity space. There's more what I call structure on top of that building itself.
Well, it's all portrayed in the renderings that we've shown you today. That's what's up in that area.
Is there indoor amenity space up there?
Yep, there's indoor amenity and
okay. Can I just for clarity's sake, is that an addition to your 27 stories?
No.
That's included in the 20?
That's included in the 27, yes.
Oh,
we're nowhere near that devious now.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. And Councillor Elgar is next.
Thank you. Through Mayor Burton, thank you for coming in your presentation. Your units, currently you've got 59 units there. And I looked up to see what rentals are, and the rentals look like they would be what they would call affordable housing, which is really good for a lot of residents for Oakville. Going forward, fast forward, we've got Bill 23 to build a lot more units, and it looks like that's what you'd like to do. But also in Bill 23, it says you would only have to build 5% of the units that are calculated for affordable. So you've got 314 going in, so that would leave only 16 units that would have to be into the affordable calculation for price of rent.
Councillor, it's my understanding that this building may not be captured by the provisions of the most recent provincial legislation, but I know that the owner is very aware of the need for affordable housing and how best to provide it. So there is no number. I can't give you a percentage, but I know that it's something that she's looking at, and affordable rental, I think, is very important.
To what degree? Any idea? You have no idea, I guess, what degree that would be at this point?
I can't tell you what it would be, but I can tell you that they recognize that it's very important for the town.
I see.
And
Yeah, I got a
I also
feeling
can
what-
tell you that it's not included within the inclusionary zoning area of the major transit station area. So it's not affected by the Bill 109.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's going to be interesting how this rolls out, I can guarantee it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ilger. Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for the presentation. I just wanted to echo what Councillor Dudek and Chisholm mentioned about parking, but really traffic. Having driven by there to go to the GO station for about 8 years, especially the left-hand turn into the property, it is quite dangerous. And with that increased density and volume of people who will be coming in and out of that area, I just want to underline that, to really focus on that traffic and safety, pedestrian safety, as well as folks that are driving.
Thank you. No, those are, we are increasingly aware of the concerns about the turning movements out from this particular, the eyebrow, I'll call it, from the eyebrow onto Spears.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Thank you very much for that comprehensive presentation. And most of my questions have been asked, but I did want to highlight an appreciation for the fact that you've incorporated townhouses and that you are respecting the need for rental. But I'm surprised not to see a number for visitor parking. So I concur with all my council colleagues on all of their comments, but people do have visitors, and that in and of itself overloads areas that have this limited parking space. So if that could be considered in your assessment.
Yes, we will look at visitor parking. So the 314 was an overall number, and we didn't divide it into visitor and resident, but we will certainly provide that information. And I think your town staff will want that information from us.
And great design. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you. Well, the previous three speakers literally stole each one of my questions, but I just want to emphasize, I want to emphasize 3 points that were made, though, because thank you to Councillor Elgar for raising the affordability issue. That neighborhood in particular, but Oakville in general, needs more affordable housing, and removing those units are going to be removing a significant number of affordable units from our community. So you say you don't understand, you don't know where your client is going to price these. Will it be similar to what the building is currently, or is it going to be a gentrified building similar to what ended up across the street? I don't mean to sound negative about it. It's a significant issue in our community that affordable housing is being replaced in many cases by well above market units.
Yes, so I can't tell you what the prices will be. I can tell you this is not going to be designed as a luxury building. It's going to be a mid-range rental building. It's not a luxury building, and it's not, and it's got a very different market than a condo. Although it has to compete with condos, it's got a very different market from a condo.
I'm very happy. I should have prefaced by saying I'm very happy that it will continue to add units to the rental market, because that's a huge concern, obviously. The second thing I just want to echo is the visitor parking issue. We've experienced this in spades in North Oakville. Do not skimp on the visitor parking. It really shortcuts the success of the building. And the third one is the safety issue. I drive that particular stretch probably 6 times a day. And I can't tell you the number of close calls, actual accidents, and just delays that are caused by the traffic in that particular stretch. It's probably one of the worst areas in town in terms of traffic issues and turns. So please, and I'd like to make sure that staff are adding this to the list, please let's have a very close look at how we can improve the traffic situation, not make it worse as a result of this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McNeice.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to highlight one thing on the existing tenants there. I know you said you've worked with them and talked to them. Might I suggest you look at Section 111 of the City of Toronto Act that deals with situations like this, and it's been enforced for quite a while, and I think has treated tenants quite well, where existing tenants have the right to return to the same size unit, should they choose to do so. and replacement units are charged at similar rents, and I believe that's for a 10-year period. I'm sure many tenants have roots in the community or children that go to school there or seniors. So I ask that you consider that.
So, as you know, you mentioned it's a City of Toronto Act,
Correct.
which gives the City of Toronto special powers. And
Correct.
the Town of Oakville doesn't have a Town of Oakville Act, which gives it those
Correct.
powers.
That's why I ask you to consider
We're
it.
very aware of what the City of Toronto provisions are, and we are very, I think I'm fair to say the owner is concerned about how the tenants are treated in terms of what they're paid as a move-out allowance. And of course, they can have an opportunity to return, but we don't have the same guarantee of rents that they have in the City of Toronto.
Correct, but the owner could make that promise to tenants.
Yes, but the owner could, but I think in terms of the broader public interest, we are providing 314 rental units for everybody in the town, and it's providing an important need in the town. And so we'll definitely take under consideration the need for affordable rental, but I cannot give you a guarantee about who can return at what price. I just can't.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McNeice, for your question. And I know that the 443 cities that are not the City of Toronto have from time to time gazed jealously at their extra powers. Councillor Chisholm, welcome back.
Thank you, Worship. Just kind of triggered a question. With the existing tenants, do they have first right when the new?
Oh, they could certainly come back. Yeah, there's no. They would certainly be very happy for existing tenants to return. They just cannot guarantee the rents will be the same.
No, understanding that, but
Yeah,
they would have first
absolutely.
right if,
Yep.
because you might have them all sold before they even have an opportunity,
Well,
or
they're not
still
sold,
all
they're
rented
rented,
before.
they're rented, so
Yeah,
they-
sorry,
you
to
know.
be rented before they have an opportunity.
No, no.
So would they have an advancement of information prior to going public?
I don't know, but there would be no reason why they all couldn't come back if they wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation and your many answers to the many questions. Madam Clerk, would you, I think we're done. And,
Thank you.
And Madam Clerk, it's time to call the registered delegations, after which I'll poll to see if there's any new delegations.
The first registered delegation is Pierre Servaget.
Welcome, Mr. Sauvaget. Council looks forward to your information.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Burton, councillors and staff members, as well as members of the public. One of the important issues which I want to address is affordability. But before I touch on that, I was reading Boasfield report in regards to, sorry, pronunciation correct. It stated in the report that policy 8619 of part 3 of the ROP, Regional Official Plan, prohibits local municipalities from permitting rental housing conversions or demolition if the rental housing vacancy is below 3%. In the report, it says it's 3%, but that information is outdated. Most recently, I looked at the region of Halton, and the 2021 State of the Housing Report has the vacancy rate overall for the town of Oakville at only 2%. So right off the bat, this development is a no-go. I would appreciate if staff would look carefully into this matter, because you'd be going against the region of Halton policy. So that's number one. So that's what I want to point out to you. In regards to the tenant relocation strategy, I know the speaker addressed the fact that it'll make, the owner will provide compensating packages for existing tenants above those required under Residential Tenancy Act. I'd appreciate that town staff look carefully into this. I believe the current amount, I researched the Tenancy Act, and it's only 1 month's rent, that minimum to provide for the tenants. 1 month's rent, that's unbelievably low. Even if they double it, 2 months' rent, that's still low. Because currently, the rents that they're paying is way below the affordable housing market of about $2,000. The average they're paying right now is only, I believe, I have it here, is only $1,351. So as a tenant, I would say, good grief. So I get paid $1,351. Where else am I going to find in the town for that amount in rent to pay? Big deal. You give me 1 or 2, 3 months rent? That's ridiculous because the developer, or pardon me, the owner will be making exorbitant amount of profits on the backs of individuals who only can afford the rents currently charged. So it's a sad situation to look into that very carefully. In regards to, I wonder if possible staff can look as well in regards to the special site provision of the bylaw itself. I know it was mentioned by the developers, the owner and the presenters, that I'm running out of time, but that's okay. It's important issue to be dealt with. Okay, I'm getting a little beyond myself here. So I'm just going to reiterate the point that the fact that if the owner gives just a 1 month, I did the calculation, it's 1,351, times it by the 59 units. That's only about $80,000. That's a joke, I'm sorry. For the developer or the owner, I keep on reemphasizing, on the back of people who only can afford so much within the town. Basically what I'm seeing right now is the town is pushing out individuals. Even those who make $100,000, they can't afford because of cost of living and what market rates within the town is presently. So I'm very sorry to say this. I don't support, but I appreciate if the town look at that. If it's below 3% vacancy, end of deal. Second, in regards to tenant relocation, that the opportunity given for the tenant to return, but at the existing rent that they are presently being charged. That way, you can have affordable rental units, 59. By the sound of it, it's not going to be affordable. Even at 2,000, it's not affordable. Simple as that. I want to other issues, but that's for another day. So thank you very much for your time. I hope staff, as well as members of who presented and the owners, look into this very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sauvaget. Councillor Duddeck has a question for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation, and believe me, all the points you've made are ones we've been wrestling with as well. Especially given the existing rental stock and the prices that some of these people have been used to paying. The problem, I guess I have, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the Ontario Landlord-Tenant Act is under the purview of the provincial government. And I don't think under the planning regime we have control over that. So I don't want to discount what you've said, but realizing our hands are tied in regards to that. The other question I have, at the beginning of your presentation, you referenced the regional OP and a conversion. This is still a rental.
Pardon me, sorry.
You referenced a conversion?
Right.
What are we converting? Because we're still having rental.
Oh, no. The fact is you will have rental. I understand that. But the building is being demolished and a new building built.
Right.
But they said specifically, if your vacancy current vacancy within a particular municipality is under 3%, you're not allowed to demolish.
Okay, well, I'll leave that with staff to look into.
Yeah, I know, I appreciate, that's a key
Yeah,
point.
I guess
It is a
hearing
very key
conversion,
point,
I
yeah.
thought,
It's not
are we
conversion,
talking
sorry.
cross
It's-
purposes?
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody.
Again. Take care. Have a good evening.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation, please.
The next delegation is Terry Garswood.
Mr. Garswood, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Evening, councilors.
And if you could be friendly with the mic, it'll assist those of us who would like to hear you.
Okay. Good evening, councilors, Mr. Mayor. As far as I know, I've checked with the Landlord Tenant Board, and for example, if they were to renovate the building, we would have rights to come back. But in doing so and completely demolishing the building and starting over again, we've got, from what I can understand, no rights to come back at all. I'd just like to read from just a statement here that I got on my cell phone. As you can see, I'm a little nervous. I don't do this very often. But I've lived at 50 Spears Road for almost 17 years. As you know, there is a housing crisis, and there are simply not enough vacant affordable apartments available for people like myself and others residing at 50 Spears. Halbert Properties might argue that they are creating more housing, but the reality is that these new units that are being built will simply be unaffordable for the majority who live in my building. And furthermore, the Landlord Tenant Board informed me that we don't have rights to come back to the new proposed building. Sorry, I'm repeating myself a bit here. I have looked around at a few new buildings that are being built here in Oakville. And for example, I've seen one that advertises a bachelor apartment at $2,250 plus utilities, as well as a 3-bedroom unit going for about $3,500 plus utilities. Again, simply put, many of us just cannot afford these rental prices. 1/3 of all Canadians rent, and quite often people transition from renting to buying homes. But it seems to me that at this point, many people can't afford to rent, let alone buy a home. I myself am a long-term renter, and I am shocked by the rising prices of apartments in my building alone, in particular since rent controls were taken off vacant units in 2018 by the Ford government. I've seen the rent on a 2-bedroom unit in my building go up about $600 a month in roughly 4 years. Seems a little bit much to me. By removing these rent controls, prices, in my opinion, have been unfairly raised up past the point that the average people can afford in our so-called rent-controlled building. Basically, rent control seems like a toothless lion to me now. Therefore, I'm asking Oakville Town Councilors and Mr. Mayor to reject this proposal for rezoning, at least until some more affordable housing is built to accommodate people who simply don't have it in their budgets to afford a $2,250 bachelor apartment, let alone 1-bedrooms, 2s, and 3s. And also, have nowhere to relocate, because basically there's not a lot of new units being built. When I was a kid, I moved out at age 18 and I had my first apartment, and I could afford it. There was units that were available, but as we all know now, there's a lot of young people finishing university, school, whatever, and they can't even get an apartment, let alone buy a home. So anyways, I've lived in Oakville for 19 years now, and I've grown to love this town. If the rezoning of this building is allowed, I will be pushed out of Oakville. This would not seem to be in keeping with Oakville's model to be the most livable town in Canada, to me. But anyways, what I'd like to just reiterate is I hope that perhaps you don't give permission to rezone this building until more affordable, rent geared to income and more affordable housing has been created. Because by shoving everybody out of this building, many of us have nowhere to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You strike at the heart of the matter. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
The next delegation is Nicole LeBlanc from the West River Residents Association.
Welcome, Ms. LeBlanc. Council looks forward to your information.
Good evening, Mayor Burton. Good evening, councilors. Good evening, staff and the general public here. My name is Nicole LeBlanc. I'm the president of the West River Residents Association. And really, first off, I want to express our support for infill development and finding ways to get more housing for more residents. I think we've already brought up most of the issues that I plan on presenting today, so some of this will be a bit redundant, but we do want to bring up what the West River community is most concerned about. So our major concern here is the height. As proposed is 27 stories, which is 15 stories above the town's urban designation, which is 12 stories. Heights in this area range, as we know, from single-family detached, and then it moves up from 11 to 21-story buildings. We feel that 21 stories is far above what should be considered, and I actually just got a really good visual from the presenters today looking at that center building between the other two existing buildings, and it doesn't fit with the current surroundings. I know they've used some of the proposals of the current Spears development, which is not approved for a zoning amendment, or, anything has not been approved there, so it's really hard to do any comparisons. And our real challenge is that we worry that this will have impact across the whole town, not even just our community, but others as well. We did talk about the large north wall at the top and that it is included in the 27 stories, but it really does make it feel bigger than proposed. I understand that staff did have that suggestion, so maybe there's better reasons for that to occur, but it is that upper portion that adds to the shadowing in our community, so I want that to be considered as well. The increase from 185 units per hectare to 755 units per hectare will really affect traffic, as well as just the ability for residents to move about the area. We know that this is already a challenging corridor, which I know Councilor Chisholm already talked about. And then I also wanted to bring about the whole underpass as well, because we know that without the underpass, this corridor is jam-packed, and it all kind of is going to move together. Once the underpass happens, then they can upgrade Spears. They can make it all move in a much more cohesive way. But that left turn and kind of what we've already discussed today is something that we're really worried about. So, I don't need to cover that because I think our counselors really brought up a lot of the things that I was going to say. So what we do request is that as part of the proposal, that more is done to be sure that left turns perhaps are not allowed from the property or to the property. I'm not exactly sure how that would work, but I'm sure our awesome town staff can find a way to make it happen so that we can really improve the flow there. One other thing about visitor parking that came up today, with that corridor between Spears and Bartos, we do worry that without adequate visitor parking, that we're going to get cars all the way down Bartos along all of the surrounding roads there. So visitor parking is really important. There's two other areas of interest that we wanted to have documented on this proposal, and that's just so that the future is protected. The first is the landscaping of the south side. Mayor Burton, you actually mentioned earlier about how, the architectural design, we're not allowed to kind of tell them what to do, and they have a plan there, but we just want some guarantee that there is proper kind of landscaping that will really marry the school with the single family homes and the new development that will make it what it needs to be, which is, flowing into the community. We also want just a description of how this transition would occur beyond just the architectural drawings that we know can change as the development proceeds. Second, the easement on the west side of the property, which we are happy with in its initial concept. It certainly is an upgrade, but we want to make sure that there are checks and balances in place, that it isn't wide enough to ever allow for vehicle passage in the future. We worry that this could change as time goes on, and so making sure it's not wide enough or that there's stipulations in place. That is all from me for now. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the chance to clarify that I was speaking about the color and cladding of a building, not landscaping. landscaping, we're in good condition to require appropriate landscaping. That exists for the Director of Planning under the site plan control feature of the Planning Act. So landscaping, they haven't taken that away from us yet.
Perfect.
Councillor Dudek now has questions.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for raising the landscaping, and as the mayor just referenced, through the site plan process, there is an opportunity to participate, members of the public, if council gives direction to staff to ask that it return. We don't do it very often, but as Councillor Chisholm and I had explained to you and other members of the West River, you're very restricted in the scope for a site plan, but certainly the landscaping is something that does fall within that purview. So we'll raise it with staff at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Councillor, I hate to correct you, but the Ford government actually has taken away site plan review at council. There's no coming back. It doesn't, that expired, that coming back to council, that's over.
Okay, thank you for the correction. Is there an opportunity then before any consideration of approval of an application that the residents have an opportunity to comment on the landscaping?
I'm not aware of one.
Well, thank you, province.
Well, you know, we have to work with what we are given, or what's left to work with, I guess you could say. Councillor Chisholm.
Your Worship, your point's well taken. In reflecting back with our applications that have to come in and our timelines and so forth, I understand the planning department has kind of moved things back before approvals to have pre-consults and everything else. I'm going to direct this to the staff. Is there a possibility to have a meeting or a discussion with the residents associations and the councillors with respect to site plan prior to approval? Is that a possibility?
Through Mr. Mayor. Through the pre-consultation process, what we work with the applicant is to take council's direction how to apply it to the site from that technical perspective. What we offer then is once the applications come in, is that information is available online. We post all of our site plans on the town's website, as I'm sure council knows. There's opportunities for the public to provide their thoughts, their opinions, their advice to staff. We take that into consideration as we proceed with processing the applications. The challenge that we have now with the latest changes from Bill 23 is we only have 60 days within which to deal with, with Bill 109, after which there are refunds. So we're still working through that process, but the other thing that we look at, and council has seen this before, is when we provide a recommendation on the zoning, we oftentimes will have a list of suggestions from an urban design perspective as part of an appendix to that report, and we can use that to help inform the site plan process as well.
Council, I would just add, staff have now had the benefit of West River's thoughts on this, and the assurance that landscaping is a matter that the town staff can see to. And so it's not like no input has been had on it. In fact, input has just been given. So I think it was very timely of West River to come and provide that input. And I thank you again, Ms. LeBlanc.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
We have a phone-in delegation from Alexander Buchan. Oh.
Hello, Mr. Buchan, I'm assuming. Welcome to council. We look forward to your information.
Thank you. My wife and I reside at 30 Spears Road, and we have resided here for over 15 years. We are adjacent to the what is being called in the traffic plan that's online as the Spears Road Service Road. The proposed building for 50 Spears adds 5 times density of unit, and with the price of the units that are going to be made available, these tenants that will move in will almost all rely on their cars, as compared to the suggestions in the traffic plan that only a certain number of left-ins and left-outs will occur. The service U, the Spears Road service U that accommodates part of 80 Spears, 50 Spears, and 30 Spears, was simply not made to accommodate the complexity of traffic by an additional 250 cars, however they come in and out within a day. And any plan for a building at 50 Spears needs to be done in consideration of the future usage of the service road, which comes in and it allows access to all of the apartments at this area. And this is a concern. While it has been suggested that the West Bartos pedestrian route allows access to the school, in reality, many school children and their parents, they run across the road from 41, or as they're coming in, they cut through the U and they go through 30 Spears through the cut in the fence to the soccer yard at the public school. So there is a lot of complexity that goes on in there. You get Uber stopping, you get service vehicles coming in, UPS, etc. And a comprehensive plan that redesigns the entire U and, as has been discussed, a write-in and write-out only needs to be introduced into the plan, contingent on approving this increase in density. This also would be a good time to move the eastbound bus stop from in front of 80 to within the U itself. That's what I got to say.
Mr. Buchan, thank you very much for bringing us your suggestions. Are there questions specifically for Mr. Buchan? Otherwise, I'm going to turn to Councillor Nanda. Councillor Nanda.
Thank you, Your Worship. My questions or statement is directly towards Mr. Garswood and his submission. I think that plays to the heart of the issue. I think we need to look at the impact that this is having on residents' livelihood. I would personally want to know how many residents would have to be uprooted, would have to leave Oakville because of this, and have been long-standing residents of this building. We are not talking about a vacant land. We are talking about a land that has residents currently living there and have been there, as Mr. Garswood said, for many years. And we're talking about developing, we're talking about Bill 23, we're talking about affordable housing, but at the heart of the issue is people who are going to have to leave Oakville. And I see that as very unfortunate. If they've been taxpayers here, they've been living here, this has been their livelihood, I would like to know how many families would have to be uprooted and would have to leave Oakville because of a decision that we are going to make. I don't know how to get those numbers. I don't know if the Residents Association can get those kind of numbers of how many residents would not be able to afford to live in Oakville now because we're going to develop a 27-story building.
Thank you, Councillor Nanda. Counselor Chisholm, Counselor Adams, we're not done polling delegations, if that matters to you. And if it doesn't, Counselor Chisholm, you're next.
Thank you, Worship. Just to add on to Nav's comments, listening to all the presentation and so forth, and what we really have to come to grips with is the social component of this. The government is pushing for affordable housing and changing all kinds of legislation in order for this to happen. But meantime, it's almost counterintuitive where the private sector wants to build a large building and move out people that are on basically probably pensions or can't afford anything more than what they're doing now. So it seems to be counterintuitive what's happening. We're promoting affordable housing. Meantime, residents and tenants have to move out because they can't afford it. So it's very confusing messaging that's happening, and that's just a comment from me personally. And I do feel for all the residents and the tenants in those buildings. I've had many discussions with them, and it's going to be a difficult time. That whole area is under attack with respect to development, and what we do for that complete community is really going to be a difficult task for us to navigate through, but at the same time, it's a social component that it's missing the whole thing here. You know, we're talking about bricks and mortar. I'm talking about people. And I'll just leave it as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I know you speak for every member of council in that we are all concerned about the people. Madam Clerk, are there other listed delegations?
Our last listed delegation is another phone-in, and it's James McDonald.
I can see them on the screen. I'll just wait for the sign to say they're unmuted. Mr. McDonald, are you aware that you're on mute? Mr. McDonald, can you, if you can hear us, you need to figure out how to unmute yourself. Or in the alternative, Zoom's got to figure out a way to let us do it, but so far we don't have that ability.
He should press *6 on his phone to unmute.
Mr. McDonald, if you can hear me, press *6 on your phone to unmute. Well, Madam Clerk, I think what we're going to, Mr. McDonald.
Hello.
Welcome.
Sorry about that.
We were worried that we would never be able to hear you.
I was pressing *6 and it just wasn't unmuting. So I apologize. Good evening, councilors, and good evening, Mr. Mayor. I am a current resident here at 50 Spears Road. We've been here for almost 4 years. Just bear with me. I'm going through some health issues right now. So if I start stuttering a bit, it's because of that. Now, the thing is, there's a few issues with this redevelopment that, one, we all agree on is the traffic hassles that it's going to cause. Some days it takes me 20 minutes to get out of that circle, the semicircle in front of the buildings, the access to the buildings, because the traffic is so bad out there, and especially around, now school's back around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, where everybody's rushing to get their children from school and stuff like that. Another thing is the flow of the truck traffic that comes down this road is another issue. I know that there's warehouses on Spears Road close by the Food Basics and everything like that, so that's understandable. But it's, at that time of the day, we should be putting up some signs where to limitate the truck traffic. As with the bus routes, there's 2 bus stops right across from each other. Okay, and then we also have another bus stop right at the corner of Spears Road on the west side of the traffic light at Kirk. So there's one right there, and then as soon as you get past there, there's another one right in front of our building. So you have 2 bus stops within 500 meters of or less. So that doesn't, maybe you guys can rezone the bus stops like the gentleman said earlier. Now that's just that issue. Now with this size of this building that's going to be here, parking of course is a factor. They actually, the owners rent out spaces to other building on our property as it is right now. With that kind of volume and everything, it'll be impossible for anybody to get out on that main street with the traffic flow the way it is now. It's bad during the day. So that is my big concern. And where they have the size of this bottom unit, it's basically taken up all the property that is from here to that semicircle to each parking lot in the tree line over here to the right of the building, and to the very back fence where you have Bertle Street. There's a house right there. Like this thing's going to be massive on this property. It's for the size of the building. I think it's for the square bottom portion of it is going to be way too big, and it's just going to create more hassle. Now, as in the building here with the residents that live here, a lot of them are, half of them are elderly, on fixed pensions, stuff like that. So for them to up and reroute to somewhere after they tear down this building is going to be impossible for them. And even at ourselves with my medical condition, we can barely make rent. And the property management, as soon as someone moves out, they're raising the rent by $500-600, sometimes even up to $800, plus charging for parking. So that's another issue. And they don't. I mean, this is about redeveloping the property. I know that. There's a lot of issues with the existing building as it is here, the plumbing, the cockroach infestation. They don't maintain the building that it is here now. So that's another issue. A lot of people here, and a lot of them are Filipino families that work here with kids and children, and there's only one person working in the family because the other one stays home and takes care of the children. And they're worried about getting uplifted and they won't be able to afford anything. And we have a strong Filipino community in Oakville, as we're all aware. But yes, I do not see that building being like something that's going to help out the area in Oakville. It's going to create more nightmares than anything for a lot of people. And that's all I really have to say on the matter.
All right, well, thank you for
I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for taking the time to share all that information with us, some of which was new and useful to us. So thank you for that. Madam Clerk, do you have any more?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. McDonald. Are there any members of the public here with information for council on this matter? If so, please come, well, no, please speak at If you want us to hear you, you really need to come to the desk and speak into the microphone. Otherwise, we don't have a chance.
Hello, my name is Jillian Banks. I've actually met a couple of you before, I think, around. So I've lived in Oakville now for about 10 years. And I have been lucky that I found another place that I can move into. However, I don't know exactly when that will be. I don't know how long there's going to be in between leaving this place and moving into the other place. There's a lot of upheaval in my life. One of the options that I've come up with, which I think other people in my building might have to do the exact same thing, is to move into Bronte Park if it happens to be opened at the time that we get kicked out of our apartment building. So my thing is there's just a lot of people there. They're real people. I fortunately have figured out another plan, sort of. However, I still think that there's a lot of people in the building that it's going to really hurt their lives. I think it's a beautiful building. We should respect this building that's been there for over 50 years, that perhaps should be a heritage building and should be respected as the original building in the area, which it is, which I'm pretty sure of. I can't guarantee that, but I've looked around. It seems quite likely that was the original building before the bridge was even there, when there was a beautiful pool, when it was beautiful. And you know what? It's still a beautiful building. My unit still has the original chandeliers in it. Somehow they managed to stay there all these years. It was originally an upscale building. I think rather than tearing it all down, perhaps we should make it better and bring it back up to par where it used to be, because it really actually used to be an upscale building. So yeah, anyways, thank you everybody. And I don't know, if you guys get rid of this building, maybe you'll never see me again, because I probably won't be able to stick around Oakville unless the other place works. But like I said, there's going to be a lot of time in between. You want to talk loud?
Okay. Hi, Mia Burton.
Thank you.
Councilors.
Welcome.
My name is Sherry Hindle. I've lived in Oakville for 30 years. I've been working for the last 15 years and living at that building for 15 years. I'm living on minimum wage right now. My son is in college, full-time. And when all this started, we didn't know. He basically said, Mom, I want to focus on finishing my education. So he quit working. We worked through COVID, both of us. So now he went back full-time, and he's doing computer science and computer engineering, so he has to focus. So now I'm home on sick leave. I can't go to work for a couple of months because of my hand, I got plantar fasciitis, sciatica. I love to work. I don't want to sit down home. It's boring. And now I'm in this stressful situation, thinking about moving. We have looked, like the previous person said, I can't afford $2,500. I can't afford $3,000 a month. We can't even afford right now. The money I have in my account right now, I have to pay rent next month. They ask us to move, they're going to demolish the building, but they raised my rent. They increased twice as much from last year. I don't know what to do. I'm trembling right now because I'm stressing out. I can't sleep. Yeah. I have food in my cupboard, yeah, because the last 2 years, anything on clearance or on sale, I was stocking up on. So I'm thankful for that. Thank God every day that I'm living in this country and I have a job and I have a loving, grateful son. I'm thankful. I'm thankful for everything, but this is a big stress on me. And I'm thankful, and I don't want the building. I'm against it because the bus stop is outside my door. I walk to my physiotherapy. I walk to my doctor. I walk to my grocery. I walk to the GO station. And I walk. Everything for me is walking distance, and I love living where I live. And I can't see myself moving. And if I have to move, my son and I will be under that bridge down the hill. Thank you.
Thank you very much for putting such a human face on the situation for us again. All right, I'll confine the matter to table, and we'll ask Paul Barrett what he's captured for the issue list for this. Oh, Councillor Adams, sorry, and then Councillor Grant. Beg your pardon, gentlemen.
That's okay. I lowered my hand earlier because you rightfully noted that we were still full in the audience. I just wanted to ask our staff if they could report back on this issue of the conversion of housing and the 3% figure. No, I've lost my page. So it is under section 8619 of the official plan, where it reads, require local municipalities to use a rental housing vacancy rate of 3% as a minimum threshold to permit the conversion of existing rental housing to ownership tenure or other uses or the demolition of such housing. So I wonder if staff could report back on the implication of that.
Yes, it is. Councillor Grant.
I'm not sure if I'm adding anything to the list, but I do want to say that for all this talk, all this legislation about affordable housing, I'm probably the only person on council who rents right now. I'm lucky to have been grandfathered into my building in a certain way because it's kind of ironic. If I were to try and downsize, I would be paying upwards of $700 more a month, which is completely unaffordable for me in some ways. I'm glad so many people have come forward to put a human face on this because, again, for all this lip service about affordable housing, these are actually the people that we're trying to serve. And these are the people who are being let down by this system. And it breaks my heart that we have to go through a process like this and not have any way that the legislation allows us to look at the human element, just at the legalities of things. That's pretty much all I had to say.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Giddings, and then Councillor Elgar.
Thank you, Worship. I'm wondering if staff might be able to just address the correlation between density in growth nodes and how those people who are going to live here are, how the transportation is supposed to look. Because we identify growth nodes and then we say, but they all need 1.8 cars and parking for it and roadways. And that's probably the number one concern we hear is transportation. So if staff could maybe address how transportation in a planning policy perspective is supposed to work in these densities and growth nodes, and maybe have a bit of a higher level look at it with regards to how this intersection now and in the future is supposed to function. I think that would be helpful because I know I've heard that a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When the proponent's representative was speaking at the start of the meeting, there was talk about the building being captured by recent changes in provincial legislation. And I didn't receive clarity on that. So if that could just be clarified when it comes back, so we know for sure what the provincial legislation possible changes have had on this project.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Good thing to add. Councillor Elgar, and then Councillor McNeice, and then Councillor Hazlett-Thiel, and then Councillor Knoll. It's a lineup.
Thank you. Through Mayor Burton. Also, this is related, similar to what Councillor Giddings just mentioned. It has to do with the Bill 23. What I read is the bill would amend the Planning Act regulation to limit inclusionary zoning to secure affordable housing to a maximum like 5% of the units. Just so we understand going forward what Bill 23 would do. Because now I understand you were able to go 10 or 20%. And if we get clarification coming back to us on that, because there's still a lot of details, I think, that we don't understand about Bill 23. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Councillor McNeice.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for staff, I know that this isn't in the area of inclusionary zoning, but I worry that this might set a precedence for 30 Spears and the adjoining properties. And potentially it's a separate report, but I think we should maybe look at this area for inclusionary zoning, because what other tools do we have to keep residents in their building? I think inclusionary zoning could be one of them. But yeah, I think we're really in a hard place here. And is there a path that this doesn't happen again to us? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McNeese. Councillor Haslett-Deal.
Well, actually, further to that, I'm just wondering if planning can report back on, is there anything in our toolkit that would allow us to put in a higher number for affordable units within the building, or any other creative solutions around protecting the current tenants? I'm not sure that there is, but if somebody could look more creatively at that, that would be appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Haslett-Deal. Councillor Knoll.
I was trying to mute myself on Zoom. Force of habit. I'm curious as to the neighboring buildings, and there's two buildings on the east side and one on the right, on the west side. Has there been consultation done with those buildings, with those building owners? Are they already in the loop? I know that that's one of the planning issues, is to look at the impact on those properties, but has there been a discussion with those buildings up to this point? And if so, has there been any commentary from them in terms of concerns, in terms of the impact on access to their buildings, emergency access, any of those issues? It could be, you could add it to the list and come back with that if you wish. I would like to know more detail about whether they've been actively involved. I don't know who the owners are, or whether or not they've been, I'm sure they've been notified, but have they been engaged in the process? Because they'll obviously be living with that down the road. And I just want to put a second check mark behind Councillor Haslett-Field's last comments. I think that's a good thing to add to the list as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Shall we hear the list? Mr. Barrett.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of Council. I've wrote down 9 additional items for the matters to be considered. The first one is to review and provide an evidence-based analysis of the proposed reduction of the minimum parking ratio and identify an appropriate minimum amount of dedicated visitor parking. Number 2, review and provide a response on applicable policy and regulations regarding replacement of affordable housing and inclusionary zoning. Number 3, review transportation considerations, including a complete assessment of the transportation study, turning movements from Spears Road and within the, quote, service road, potential improvements to Spears Road and or, in quote, the service road, and impact on area roads and intersection capacity. Number 4, review the maximum permitted density and building height in the context of applicable policy and the surrounding context, together with the scale and massing of the proposed building. Number 5, review building setbacks and building transitions to the existing elementary school and low-density residential neighborhood to the south, including adequate space for appropriate landscaping. Number 6, review and provide a response on applicable policy and regulations regarding demolition of rental buildings, including pursuant to Bill 23 under the Municipal Act and the 3% vacancy rate policy of the Halton official plan. Number 7, identify whether the existing building is a significant cultural heritage resource. Number 8, address the correlation between density, transportation, and urban mobility and growth nodes. And finally, clarify public consultation undertaken to date and whether the owners of adjacent buildings have been consulted.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Everybody satisfied with that? Would someone from the ward like to give the indicated motion? Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. This is the motion to receive the report and the comments from the public and the comments as have been provided by council. And I would just ask if Mr. Barrett could add one that I heard early on, not from a delegation, but actually it was in the planner's presentation, when the planner said in an offhand way that there was plenty of recreation opportunity nearby in the 16-Mile Creek. And I thought, perhaps we need an issue that says, are there sufficient recreational opportunities in the area? Just to, I don't know. Yeah. Went by, but yeah. All right, so with that, and we're all agreed on that, then I'll call the vote. Anybody opposed to Councillor Chisholm's motion? Madam Clerk, there being none, that carries. Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. We have no more public hearing items, and we have no discussion items. In fact, we've reached the point in the agenda where we do the advisory committee minutes. And the recommendation pertains to items 4.1, 4.2, and 0.3 of the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee minutes from its meeting December 13th, that those recommendations be approved and the remainder of the minutes be received as listed in the agenda. Is there a mover for this? Councillor McNeice, thank you. Is there any objection to the motion? There being none, that carries. Thank you, Councillor McNeice. It would now be in order for a motion to rise and report to council. Councillor Elger, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries. And I rise and report the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent items 4.1, 0.2, 0.3, and 0.4, confidential consent items 5.1 and 0.2, public hearing items 6.1, 2, 3, and 4, and advisory committee minutes item 9.1 as noted by the clerk. May I have a mover and seconder to adopt the report? Councillor Longo and Councillor Grant, thank you. Any objection? There being none, the report is adopted. Council, is there any new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature? Thank you. Then it's in order now for a motion for the consideration and reading of the bylaws as listed in the agenda. Councillor Lischina and one more, Councillor Adams. We haven't had you on the list yet. All those, any opposed to the consideration and reading of the bylaws? There being none, they're read, considered, and passed. And that ends the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions to a good council meeting that really laid bare the raw nature of what's going on in this province. Sure does.